Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you're at. This is Plate Coverage. I appreciate you guys all tuning in for our second episode going over the National League now. Really quickly, just want to say thank you to everybody that commented, liked the video, sent us a message in the first one. Obviously, things are all moving parts and stuff right now, but we appreciate all the feedback. We're going to be doing this once a week, so really excited about it. But anyway, like I said, Commish is here with me. We're talking National League. Commish, how are we doing?
I'm doing great, man. We'll try to keep this episode just a little bit shorter than the other one, but we appreciate everybody who stuck around and listened to the full 2 hours. Hopefully you learned a lot about all the teams in the American League from that last video.
Yeah, we should jump right into it then, huh?
Yeah, we got the NL West, juggernaut Dodgers, Padres, reigning pennant winning Diamondbacks, and then of course you have the Giants, and I think the Rockies are still in that division too, at least in name. What do you got for this division in 2024?
Well, this is like one of the more fun divisions, I think, in Major League Baseball, if not probably the funnest division. Obviously, with the Dodgers and Shohei and everything that they're doing. And then you have a team, obviously, like the Diamondbacks that just got Jordan Montgomery that add another solid starter. The Giants are spending money. The Padres didn't spend any money, but they still got a very good baseball team. And then there's the Rockies, of course, that are nothing. So I'll start off with the Dodgers. I do, obviously, they're probably one of, if not the best team in baseball. There's no really question about that. It's just a matter of if they get the job done in October. Obviously, you can talk about the lineup. You can talk about the arms. I want to talk about the arms first. Tyler Glass now, obviously coming over from Tampa Bay, should be an absolute stud for them. One of those guys is probably, I expect him to have like a 3.3 ERA, probably strike out close to 200 guys. I mean, that's a little bit of exaggeration, but I do think that Tyler Glass now fits in very, very well with this Dodger team. And we saw it his first time out in Korea as well. Yamamoto is another guy that's obviously was talked about a ton and did not look good. He didn't look good a little bit in the spring. He did not look good against the Padres. I don't know if I worry about that a lot. He didn't really seem to have very much control. I think he only flew through his splitter like 4 or 5 times, and I don't think any of them were for strikes.
I don't. On that note, Toast, like I think Yamamoto is a really interesting example because this is a guy that none of us have seen before that start against the Padres, and of course, if you watch a little bit of spring training, but again, that's only semi-real baseball at that point in the year with guys working on different things. A lot of minor league guys, non-major league invitees to camp and stuff like that. So we know Yamamoto was one of the best pitchers of all time overseas. Gets a massive, lucrative contract to come over to the Dodgers. All of the stuff grades out well. You could, if you read Eno's article, you know about the plus fastball. You know he's got the nasty splitter. He can command all those pitches. Then you see him throw 43 pitches in the first inning against the Padres, and I mean, he looked awful, right? You don't have to mince words. He looked awful, but what do you expect from him the rest of the season? Like, how concerning is that to you if you're the Dodgers or if you're a Dodger fan, heading into April?
For me, I kind of throw that out, and the only reason I say that is I think there was a lot of things going on in that situation for the Dodgers, whether it be them in Korea, his first start in Major League Baseball, all the stuff with Ohtani. Again, I'm not trying to say that the Ohtani stuff directly affected how Yamamoto pitched. My point is there's a lot of...
I know it was Ohtani's interpreter, but I mean, he's a guy who's in the clubhouse all the time.
Exactly.
I'm sure yeah.
There's just a lot of things going on. There was just a lot of things going in that clubhouse. But I mean, even if you take a look at like Steamers and Zips, they're all expecting, I mean, Steamer has him at a 3.4 ERA. Zips has him at a 3.6. I would expect him around that 3.5 area. I really do. I think that he's going to face a lot of teams that aren't going to be ready to face the arsenal that he has. And like Commish just said, fastball, slider, curveball, splitter, cutter, and he has an 80 out of 80 command as well. So it's just one of those things that he literally has every single thing that you could possibly ask for as well. I don't know if I'm there with Rookie of the Year or Cy Young, but maybe this year. But I do think that he's going to be very good for the Dodgers as the years come. So I wouldn't put too much stock into him not having a good start against the Padres personally. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I completely agree, man. The guy can sit in the upper 90s with the fastball. He's got the splitter. The curveball, I think, is probably going to be one of the better curveballs in Major League Baseball as well. I just think with how advanced pitch grading models are nowadays, a team that's as smart as the Dodgers doesn't give someone 12 years and over $300 million, if there's even a little bit of doubt about how his skills are going to translate to the MLB level, I think if he struggles at all, maybe it's related to just it's a new lifestyle being in Major League Baseball versus what he's used to. I think at certain points, guys are tipping their pitches and they're not aware. Like we can see guys with really, really good stuff, and they just don't realize that they're telegraphing what's coming to the hitter. And guys can sit on certain things. He really wasn't getting a lot of swings and misses. He wasn't fooling guys. But I think it's also worth noting if Max Muncy fields that ground ball at third base in the first inning, Yamamoto might have lasted 2, 3, 4 innings in that spot. So for me, I think Yamamoto is going to be fine. I think him and Glass now at the top of the rotation is truly one of the elite 1-2 punches in all of baseball. And then you got guys like Bobby Miller, who had a phenomenal season last year. Projections have him looking just as good again in 2024. You can see Steamer has him right around a 4 ERA, a 4 FIP. Personally, I'm even higher on him. If you look at the list right here, you can see some of the guys that he is comparable to. 16 guys last year that were very similar to Bobby Miller in skill set in terms of getting ground balls, good command, able to get some strikeouts. And you can see all these dudes: Sonny Gray, Tyler Glasnow, Gausman, Eflin, Steele, like a lot of these, Kyle Bradish, guys that were in the Cy Young conversation in the respective league last year. Griff Canning had a 4.29 FIP. He was the worst pitcher on this list. So I think Bobby Miller is one of those guys that has a skill set that is a really high floor, high ceiling type of situation. So I think having Glasnow, Yamamoto, and Bobby Miller 1, 2, 3 in a rotation is, when you talk about a team that's built to win 100 games in the regular season, my God, you just imagine getting a Friday, Saturday, Sunday series against the Dodgers, and those are the 3 guys you have to face. How good do you feel about avoiding a sweep? Not even winning the series. Do you think you can avoid a sweep against those 3 guys?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Bobby Miller's over-unders for their strikeouts this year was 150.5. I scooped that up as soon as they dropped that number. I just think that he's going to be one of these fantastic guys for the Dodgers as well. And then if you take a look, let's take a look at their bullpen and a couple guys that, well, actually, before we even get to their bullpen, to think about the guys that could possibly be coming back at some point in this year: Walker Buehler, Tony Gonsolin, Clayton Kershaw. Is Dustin May scheduled to come back as well? I'm not positive on that one. Commish, do you know?
Probably not.
Okay, I didn't think so. Yeah.
But, if Walker's back in May and James Paxton,
he was my next guy. Yep.
I don't think people realize how good James Paxton is. Like, James Paxton has never been bad. He's just never been healthy.
And that's your fifth starter.
Right, man. And let's just say James Paxton gets through April and May, then Kershaw is not going to be back at that point. But the Dodgers just have so much depth. You talk about an embarrassment of riches. The Dodgers have so many talented arms that they can throw out there. And we saw last year, even when they don't have the most talented arms, they understand how to put guys in positions to succeed. I mean, we had, guys like Evan White. We have, Gavin Stone. Like, there are pitchers that they're going to be able to put out there to get 9 outs in a game. And then you have an offense that, I mean, God, Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Will Smith just signed an extension. There's a never-ending list.
Years too. Good Lord. James Outman was a damn near Rookie of the Year candidate last year.
Yeah, and he's one of their worst hitters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why he got in 7th. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. I will say,
does 7th in this lineup? Where would he bat in a lineup that didn't have this much talent? It's interesting to think about.
I will ask you. We haven't talked about this off show, but this is one thing. Does it bother you at all that they're so right-handed heavy? The only lefties in that lineup, in that rotation and bullpen, obviously James Paxton as your 5th, Vesia, and then Ryan Yarbrough. The only 2 lefty arms. Does that concern you at all? Or do you think that they're just that damn good?
Not really. I think the 3-batter minimum has definitely changed things in Major League Baseball. You don't have guys who are going to come in and get those, like that one lefty out in the 7th inning anymore, because now, unless you get the 3rd out of the inning, you're going to probably have to face a righty at some point. The other thing is, one thing I have noticed in recent years is when teams have multiple, like if you say you have 2 right-handed pitchers in a row that profile very similar to one another, that can be problematic. So guys who come from similar arm slots, guys who have similar pitch mixes, but all these guys are so different for the Dodgers. I mean, Tyler Glasnow and Yamamoto are completely different pitchers. Bobby Miller's a completely different pitcher than the other guys. And then, of course, you have Paxton coming from the left side. So I think there's a little bit more diversity than might meet the eye on the surface with this pitching staff.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of the same way. I've seen a lot of people kind of try to make that a bigger deal than I think it really needs to be. And I think that you hit the nail right on the head with the 3 batter minimum rule. With especially with how deep these teams are getting and with being able to shuffle guys in and out, I don't think it's that big of a deal either. Yeah. So it's just, the Dodgers. I don't think you guys need us to tell you the Dodgers are a good baseball team. It's pretty simple.
Well, so let's do this. So the Dodgers are good. We've established that.
Yeah.
Their win total is over under 104.5 wins.
Under for me. That's just me. Like, I'm not in any spot to play a team that think they're going to win 106 games. Like, do I think that the Dodgers are going to win 100 games? Probably. But could they win 103 and I lose this bet and they have a fantastic year and I'm mad? Yeah. So I'm just not really a fan of betting teams, especially over that 100 marker. I'm not how sure you feel about it. It wouldn't be surprise me at all if they went over it, but I would lean under just because of how big that number really is.
I'm 100% with you. And we also did not talk about this off show, but
no, we didn't.
The most interesting component of this Dodgers team, and I guess this is something that you're probably not going to hear anybody talk about because everyone's going to tell you how good the Dodgers are. And everybody's going to be scared to say anything bad about the Dodgers because there's a very real chance that they win 110 games with the lineup and the pitching staff that they have constructed. But the one interesting thing I did find in my research, this is by far the worst defense the Dodgers have had in a decade plus. Like during their current run of dominance in the National League West and in the National League overall, they've been a very, very good defensive team since 2015. So you can see 7th, 3rd, 4th, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 4th from 2015 to 2022. Last year, closer to league average, they won 100 games. This year, I firmly believe they're going to be a bottom 3rd defense by most advanced metrics. Max Muncy at 3rd base is a problem. We've already seen that. We have already seen that. Gavin Luck's supposed to play shortstop. Now he's playing 2nd base. He's never been an outstanding defender. I think that could cause some issues. I love Mookie Betts to death. You'll never hear me say anything bad about Mookie Betts, and I'm just going to leave it at that on this show. The outfield defense, Teoscar Hernandez was a little better last year. He's not a great defender. I mean, you more so you live with this defense because you hope the bat's going to be there. It's not a great overall defense across the diamond. I say this also because the guys that are in that rotation and even in the bullpen, some of their higher leverage guys get a lot of contact on the ground. So if you don't have reliable guys at 3rd base, at 2nd base, if you're weak in a corner outfield spot, those are the types of things that they might not cause you to miss the playoffs, especially when you have this much offensive talent and you have guys who can get swings and misses as well. But we saw Max Muncy probably cost the Dodgers 3 runs at a minimum in that second game against the Padres.
We've already seen it. We've already seen it rear its head once.
That's what I mean. And not every game, and as good as the Dodgers offense is, they're not going to average more than 6 runs a game. They just won't. You just can't do that in baseball over the course of 162 games. So they're going to need to play fundamentally good defense at some point. So I think if there's anything that could derail the Dodgers season, I think it is the defense. And I actually did bet them under 104.5 wins just because I think in principle the number is too high for a team that is a little bit more flawed than I think people are willing to admit. And there are obvious health concerns with I mean, I love Tyler Glasnow. I think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, but there's a health concern there. Ohtani's coming off Tommy John. Muncy's a little bit on the older side. There's ways that this season could go wrong in a way that I don't think a lot of people are publicly commenting on.
Yeah. And I also want to put out, just to put that Dodgers defense in perspective. Now this is going back, this is last year, but you can run defensive run saves. I'm using outs above average right now just as a case study, but Dodgers 17th in the league at a -4 outs above average. The issue with that is that's not bad. It's middle of the pack. The issue is the people in their division, Arizona, number 2 in the defense, are outs above average at 30. San Diego Padres, 4th in Major League Baseball at 25. So the other teams in their division are extremely good. Colorado 16th. I mean, they're not even a bad defensive team. So all these things just kind of add up to me that makes me, it's just really hard for me to get to 105, bet it, and be confident with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But on that note, you mentioned some of the other defenses in the division. If there's a team that maybe not has a chance to unseat the Dodgers at the top of the NL West, but a team that has a very good chance to finish second and be that second team in the playoffs coming out of that division, who do you like?
I I really think it's the Padres or the Giants, and I'm going to say the Padres for the type of the show. And I can already hear everybody saying, "Oh, Toasty, the Padres, yada yada yada." And I get it; like they are my favorite team. I'll let everybody know that. But I talked to Commish about this pre-show as well. I just really think there's a lot of positive things that's going on in San Diego right now. First and foremost, the pressure's off. Last year, a ton of pressure, ton of money being spent on that team, and they crumbled. But did they crumble or did they just get really unlucky? Again, horrible vibes in that clubhouse. There were stories coming out, all that stuff. I'm not blaming it all on Juan Soto, but it didn't help. He didn't help. There's a lot of different stories written about it. And now we come into this year with, I also will say San Diego was one of the unluckiest teams in baseball last year, over 100 run differential, and they still really missed out on the playoffs, and they shouldn't. But the reason that I like them here is because I think that their starting rotation 1 through 4, not their fifth guy, not Matt Waldron, but 1 through 4 with Darvish, Musgrove, Cease, and King is as good as 4 starting pitchers as you're going to get in this league. You can make a case for Seattle. You can make a case for a couple other teams, but I think that 1 through 4, they are one of, if not the best pitching rotation in this league. So there might be a couple guys, as far as like we were talking a pre-show about this in Seattle, where you might have like a Kirby or a Castillo over a Darvish or a Musgrove, but 1 through 4, I really think that the Padres can compete with anybody. And then on the back end, the bullpen, you're getting Robert Suarez, who is coming off. I still think he has a lot to prove. Remember, he's the guy that gave up the Harper home run in the NLCS, the swing of his life. I think that him being a full year as a closer is going to be really fantastic for him. I really expect him to pitch well. And then behind him, Yuki Matsui, we saw him in Korea, how nasty he was. I really expect big things out of him. Not to mention the fact that you have Wandy Peralta, who showed with New York, the Yankees last year, that he can be trusted. And that's all I really want out of my middle relief guys. I don't really need anything special. I just want to know that I can trust you to go out there 3 or 4 times a week and get the job done. I expect he had 2 pitch clock violations in Seoul, Korea. I think he had 3 of those all of last year. So I just don't, I think that was like a flash in the pan BS type of thing.
And then the clock was moving a little fast over there too. Who knows?
Yeah. And Tim Cosgrove Cosgrove is another guy that's one of my favorite relievers in this league. He's a San Diego kid drafted in the 12th round by this guys. I really, really think that he's going to be one of the nastier guys that people don't know about. And first of all, that just gets me right there with all that pitching. And then you get to the lineup and you can start punching holes in the lineup as far as maybe 8 and 9. But I mean, Xander Bogaerts in the second year of his contract, he's going to be more comfortable. I don't really worry about him moving to second base. Fernando Tatis Jr. might very well be the National League MVP this year. Jake Cronenworth's revenge tour has already started. We've seen that. And I don't really expect too much from Jake, but I do think that having Manny and Ha-Seong Kim behind him, he's going to get some opportunities this year. That's once you get past Kim in that 5th spot, Profar and Campusano, I trust Jurickson Profar. He's played well he's played well with San Diego. He went over the Rockies. It wasn't fantastic with them, but he's one of the locker room guys. He speaks like 7 languages. That just kind of matters. And with a San Diego locker room that had such shitty vibes last year, he's going to bring those vibes up. And I truly do think that matters a little bit. Tyler Wade, he's not that good. Commish is going to tell you he's terrible. He is terrible. I'm not going to lie. But what I will say, he's a veteran that's been in the league for 4 years, that if he can just give us something and he's not terrible until Manny can play full time, I'm not really too worried about it. Campusano is a really, really good hitter. And we have Kyle Higashioka to back him up and to teach him the trade. So there's so many positive things about the Padres that I like. I'm very curious to see what you think about it. And let's see if I'm a homer or not. But I really think that this team could be a lot more dangerous than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, I think first things first, you mentioned them being unlucky, and just in your defense, because I know you're going to have a lot of people in the comments saying that you're a homer and all the bit, all.
And I am a homer, to be honest. I'm a little bit of a homer.
An admitted homer, but he's acknowledging the bias out front in early. But the Padres last year, so we talked about this a little bit on the last pod on the American League preview. Win percentage in 1-run games, so games decided by 1 run, it has a lot more to do with luck than it does anything else. And it might seem counterintuitive because you think if you have a good bullpen, then you have a better chance to win those one-run games. History tells us it really has no bearing whatsoever. There's really not a strong relationship there. The one thing that overwhelmingly points to this being a luck metric is that if a team wins more than 60% of their one-run games in a given year, they almost universally regress the following year. And then if a team wins less than 40% of those games, those one-run games in 1 year, they almost universally improve their record the following season. The Padres won 28% of their one-run games last year. I went back a decade doing research into these records in one-run games. Nobody was that bad. Nobody. So I told you 40% is my threshold on the lower end. If you're 40% or lower, I'm gonna expect some positive regression the year after that. Nobody was worse than the Padres. They still managed to win 82 games, even with Juan Soto standing out there picking grass in the outfield, even with all the drama that you had with, the Stars reportedly not taking leadership or responsibility for their action. And then you had rumors that there were spies from the front office that were being given roles in the dugout and in the clubhouse. I mean, I'm telling you, the most far-fetched things that you could imagine, and some of the stuff that you could never imagine, were talked about in that Padres locker room last year. I think Bogart's, like you said, being in his second year, moving to second base, it's going to help them. Machado is going to be Machado, even coming off of surgery. I think he's going to have a nice year. When he gets back on the field defensively, we know how good Manny Machado is defensively. Tatis, you get him out of the infield, he goes from a liability at shortstop to a Gold Glove winner in right field. Those are really nice core foundational pieces to build a team around. I'm with you. I think Campusano is going to rake behind the plate. The defense is a little bit of a concern, but not often you see a catcher with those kind of bat-to-ball skills. And the rotation is very, very good. I'm 100% in agreement with you. There are rotations that you can definitely make an argument that there's better. You can make an argument that there's better 1 through 4s in a rotation. I just don't think you can make a definitive declaration that there is a better 1 through 4. Yu Darvish last year, I know he had a little bit of a down season, and then he had a rare injury, which has been that's just unheard of in Yu Darvish's career. But if you dig under the hood a little bit, he actually had a really, really unlucky season. Some of this had to do with having guys like Juan Soto in the outfield where balls probably should have been outs and they weren't outs. But only 18 pitchers last year that threw at least 100 innings had a higher batting average allowed on balls in play, another luck metric than Darvish. If you look at his expected stats, his 3.74 expected ERA was 23rd best in baseball out of over 100 pitchers to throw at least 100 innings. He was still very good. Strikes guys out, doesn't walk a lot of guys. I think he's at minimum a high floor guy, similar to Joe Musgrove, similar to Dylan Cease. And then you add a guy like Michael King, who's getting his first shot at a full-time role in the rotation. So I like this team a lot. I think it's almost a guarantee. Nothing's a guarantee in life or in betting or anything else. I think it is almost a guarantee that they win at least 80 games this year. I think it's far more likely than not that they win 85, and I would not be surprised if this team wins 90 or 95 games in 2024.
Yeah, I thought that 81.5 was pretty damn low for me. And I, even with the division being that good, I honestly think that Soto and Hader are addition by subtraction in a way with the vibes in that clubhouse and everything going on. Because even at the end of the year last year, there was issues with Hader that I'm sure that rubbed a lot of guys the wrong way. So
yeah, he wouldn't pitch on back-to-back days because he didn't want to risk an injury ahead of going into free agency. So
yeah, he wouldn't pitch back-to-back days. He wouldn't pitch in the 8th inning if we needed him to pitch, even if we would figure it out in the 9th. It just doesn't matter. He
didn't want to hurt his free agency stock, man. But
and then not to mention the fact that we have 2 really young guys, and that's one thing that you could obviously poke holes at with Jackson Merrill in center field. You're going from a Gold Glover who in Trent Grisham, by the way, you're going from a Gold Glover who can't hit for nothing to a kid who can hit anything, but has never played center field at the major league level before. I can see people not liking that, but again, just remember the Padres have a lot of young prospects as to Ethan Salas, Merrill. I talked about Robbie Snelling, Dylan Lesko, Dylan Head. There's a lot of guys coming up in this organization too. So yes, I'm a homer, but objectively speaking, I'm telling you guys a lot of positive things out of the Padres camp right now.
Yep. I think we're in agreement there. So Dodgers, Padres, that's your 1-2 in the NL West.
For me, yeah.
Third?
Just because I'm trying to be, I guess, Mr. Contrarian. And I guess we can talk, unless you want to go anything more about the Padres, we can talk a little bit more about Arizona if you'd like.
You got Arizona third in this division?
Yeah, I do.
All right. Tell me why.
I just don't know. Well, first and foremost, I just don't know what we're going to get. I don't know if they were a very good baseball team last year or that caught kind of fire. I know that Commish has a couple of things that he's going to share with you as far as that, but Zach Gallen is a guy for me that's pitched a lot over the last year and a half. I'm just not sure if I can really trust Zach Gallen to come in here and be that Cy Young type of caliber type of player that we've been accustomed to seeing over the last year or so. Just again, not trying to poke too many holes over him, but it wouldn't surprise me if he had close to a 4 ERA. He's just one of those guys that I just feel like he's going to be regressing. Merrill Kelly, obviously, a very good veteran arm that's came over from the KBO. He's like got 5 years of service time now. Again, but just another average arm. I understand they got Jordan Montgomery, but Jordan Montgomery hasn't been in camp for a while. Again, not saying that I don't think he's going to be good, but you're probably going to have a couple weeks stretch where he's rather getting into things or not looking like the Jordan Montgomery that we know and love from seasons past. Tommy Henry, Brandon Pfaadt, Ryan Nelson. Pfaadt is one of the guys that well known because of what he did in the playoffs. Again, do I really trust those guys to have sub 4 ERAs? I mean, I don't think so. And if you're asking those three guys to pitch the bulk of your innings at a higher than a 4 ERA, and now on the back end you have a guy like Paul Sewald who's already hurt. Now you're switching to Kevin Ginkgo, Scott McGraw, or however you say his last name, excuse me, and Miguel Castro. And then the fourth person in middle relief is that Ryan Thompson guy who's been around for a few years now that's been decent. But again, nothing that really scares me. Again, I'm just trying to be a little bit contrarian here. They have one of the better defenses in the National League, probably the best defense in the National League with Carroll in the outfield.
Projected 8th best defense in baseball this year by Baseball Perspective.
I mean, with the outfield of Corbin Carroll and Alex Thomas, not many things, and Gurriel as well, excuse me, not very many things are going to fall as far as there. But I mean, a lot of people are making it out like Jock Peterson could be a savior. Jock Peterson is a very good baseball player, but he can't play defense and he can't hit lefties very well. So it's one of those things where you're going to see him a lot against righties, but I don't know what you're going to get him with these against lefties. The Arizona bench isn't really deep at all. I mean, the 4 guys they got on their bench right now, as far as Fangraphs is concerned, is Tucker Barnhart, Blaze Alexander, Emmanuel Rivera, and Jace Peterson. It's just they're not a very deep team either. Tucker Barnhart has been in the league for 9 years and he's done nothing. Jace Peterson's been in the league for 6 or 7 and he's done nothing. So it's just, again, I just think that if they don't, I just don't feel like they are going to be as good as everybody thinks they're going to be. Maybe I look stupid. Maybe they continue to build and these bullpen pieces continue to pitch well and they get better, but I'm just not there with them. I think that the Padres have a little bit, I would argue that the Padres have just as good as a roster, or if not better than Arizona. And I think that they have a lot more incentive to be better as far as what happened last year. So yeah, maybe I'm too much of a homer in this division, but I'm really 100%. I really am not a fan of what Arizona is doing as far as in the context of big picture wise. I still think that there's a lot of holes on this roster.
I think you're being too nice, Toast. I almost feel like you're trying to overcompensate for your bias here.
I am a little bit because I don't want people to make it seem like I'm crazy. So tell them how I'm not crazy then, please.
Look, I'll be 100% honest. I lost a lot of money fading the Diamondbacks in the postseason last year. Me too. So, but if given the opportunity to do it again, I would do it 1 more time, 5 more times, 100 more times.
Me too.
This was not a bad baseball team last year, but when you talk about mediocrity, this was the most mediocre baseball team that you could find in baseball last year. The offense was really bad. So if you look at just after the All-Star break last year, 30th in home runs, so dead last, there's 30 teams in baseball, 26th in OPS, which is on base plus slugging, 27th in ISO. ISO is a power metric, so they had no power. 23rd in weighted on base, 25th in WRC plus. It's a bad lineup. That's a bad lineup. They caught fire at the right time of the year, so credit where credit's due. But another thing, the Diamondbacks, 44-28 against teams that finished below 500 last year, 40-50 against teams that finished with a winning record. Not a good thing to carry year over year. The other thing, too, I went back. The last team that I found to make the postseason with a negative regular season run differential, 2007, also the Diamondbacks. Fun fact, not to keep shitting on their franchise, but 2007 Diamondbacks. It doesn't happen very often. We have the expanded playoff format now, which allowed them to sneak in a little bit. They're just not a great baseball team. I think like Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, even if you throw Erod and Jordan Montgomery in there as high floor options, and if you like Brandon Pfaadt, I don't think any of them are a true ace. And Zach Gallen, once a year, Zach Gallen inexplicably alters his pitch mix in the most destructive way possible. And I'll show you guys, like he struggled down the stretch last year. He was in the Cy Young conversation pretty much the entire season until September. Well, what did he do in September? This knuckle curve right here that you see, his best pitch by almost every metric.
Let's just
randomly stop throwing it at a high rate.
You don't need it.
Made no sense at all. Numbers got a lot worse. Obviously had a good postseason. It came back a little bit, but it's another thing that makes him a little bit untrustworthy for me. I like Merrill Kelly, but he doesn't have ace upside. He's more of a high floor, above average pitcher type of guy for me. The defense is going to be good, like you said, but the offense, I mean, you have Corbin Carroll, stud, Lourdes Gurriel, slightly above average player, very good everyday regular. Christian Walker has some concerns, doesn't hit the ball particularly hard. I know he's going into a contract year, so maybe there's a little bit extra motivation there. We get another year from him of good production, and then Ketel Marte. But the rest of these guys, like Moreno, just hasn't put things together with the bat yet. Not to say that he won't; he's still very young. But then you have up the middle with Perdomo, very glove first, bat second. The bat's nowhere near where it needs to be in the major leagues, in my opinion. You bring in a guy like Eugenio Suarez.
He's barely batting 250 or 240.
That's what I mean. And then you bring in a guy like Eugenio Suarez at third base, and you want to hit more home runs, obviously, but at what cost? The guy's going to strike out a ton. So to me, this is a very top-heavy lineup. It's a very lukewarm rotation, and the bullpen has the potential to be very, very bad with Paul Sewell not in the ninth inning to begin the year because it pushes everybody up an inning, like you said. Ginkel's now in the ninth, and you have guys like Miguel Castro and other guys that you don't want pitching in high leverage situations now being tasked with protecting your late leads. I would not be surprised to see this team struggle a lot in 2024.
And the other thing with Suarez is they want power from him, but I would be surprised if he hits 20 home runs this year. He's not that guy that I look at and he's like, man, he's got some power. He can put a swing on a few balls, but he's probably going to, I guarantee, I'm not going to guarantee it, but I would bet you he has anywhere from 600 to 620 plate appearances. And I would be shocked if he has over 20 home runs this year. I truly think that he's going to bat 220 and he might have some RBIs, but that's all he was doing in Seattle. Everybody would get on base in front of him and he'd hit a single and they'd score two and he'd look good. But I don't know. I think moving down into the seventh hole in this lineup with literally no protection behind him with Thomas and Perdomo, and Gabriel Moreno doesn't really scare you in front of him. It's just really hard for me to look at that lineup 6, 7, 8, 9 and be scared about it.
Yeah. With Suarez last year, there was 293 hitters that had at least 300 plate appearances. He ranked 249th in contact percentage on pitches in the zone, 261st in K percentage overall. And you can see some of these other guys in this ballpark that strike out a ton. There's just not a lot of high performers. I think a best case scenario for a guy like Suarez is that he doesn't fall off of a cliff, that he's around league average, but the floor is certainly lower than that. So I don't think it's a sure thing bringing in a guy like Suarez to put in the lineup.
What do you think about the Giants? Because they're the team that the more I look at, because I've been talking a lot of mess about the Giants over the last couple of months, probably too much. Probably got in front of myself in that one because now I'm starting to kind of like this team a little bit. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are before I talk about them because they're starting to kind of, I don't know, man. I kind of like this team. They're a lot better than I think they were.
So the biggest impediment that the Giants are going to have this season is they have an incredibly difficult schedule, at least based on 2023 records. One of the toughest.
I saw that.
But their rotation is actually really, really good. And
It's like sneaky good.
And there's this guy, and I'm not even talking about Blake Snell. Like I couldn't give two shits about Blake Snell. I think he's a good pitcher, but he's
okay. Pump the brakes. This is a slander-free Snell podcast. Thank you very much.
We didn't go over that rule before we jumped on. But there's this guy, Jordan Hicks, who I'll be honest, when I saw that the Giants picked up Jordan Hicks, it really didn't register for me, because this is a guy who came into the league throwing 104 miles an hour, nasty stuff, couldn't stay healthy with the Cardinals, and really was just never super productive, whether it was injuries or something else. He wasn't super productive. Last year, he got traded to Toronto midseason, and they really changed a little bit of what he was doing in terms of how he was attacking hitters. They really emphasized on him. They placed a huge emphasis on him getting strike one. So what you saw a lot more sinkers early in the count, and his first pitch strike percentage jumped up to 62.5% those last 2 months of the regular season. So what happened was his walk rate ended up below 10% for the first time in his career. And not for the season, but during that stretch. His whip, so walks plus hits per innings pitch, which is basically just base runners per inning, just over 1 an inning. Phenomenal. Now, the question is, can he sustain this now being in a starter's role for the first time in his career? It's been Jordan Hicks, to me, is one of the most intriguing players in baseball going into 2024, because the guy can get strikeouts. We know that because he's got plus velo. The Giants have a really good history of maximizing starting pitching talent in terms of optimizing pitch mixes and things like that. The Giants have an improved defense behind him with Matt Chapman at third. They're going to have a stud up the middle at shortstop as well. They really have a good infield defense. Last year, guys who had an above average K percentage, above it, a solid ground ball rate, it's a really high floor skill set. You look at a lot of these other names on this list, and it's how I profile a lot of guys going into the new season. The Sonny Grays, the Glasnows, the Eflins, the Pablo Lopez. You like Blake Snell. Blake Snell's on this list also. Bobby Miller, Kodai Senga. If he can simply throw strikes, the ability to get ground balls and to get strikeouts, dude, like, he could be a very, very good pitcher for this team. And that's not even talking about Logan Webb, who was in the Cy Young conversation last year. Blake Snell, who won the Cy Young last year. Alex Cobb, coming off a hip surgery, but another one of those guys who's been able to get a fair amount of strikeouts, get a bunch of ground balls. And then Kyle Harrison, who right now still only has the one pitch. So I'm
just about to say fastball.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the fastball. But if he ends up being your number 4, number 5 guy in a rotation because these other guys pan out, he'd be one of the better number 4, number 5s that are on a pitching staff in baseball. So the pitching staff for me is a really, really potential bright spot for them. And then guys like Soler, Matt Chapman were also signings that for me, they didn't really hit. It wasn't like, oh man, the Giants just got so good by bringing in Jorge Soler and Matt Chapman, until you realize why they brought them in. And like, the Giants' third base production last year was abysmal. I mean, it was among the worst in all of baseball. And now you get to bring in Matt Chapman. So last year, I'll bring this up and I promise I'll give it back to you in a sec, Toast, and get your thoughts. I just really love this team.
You're the guy that does all the stats and stuff. I'm the gut guy, so let them all have it.
But last year, so basically you can think about weighted on base and weighted runs created plus as just like production metrics. So you don't really need to know the advanced analytics or the math behind them to understand their importance relative to their ranking. I mean, it's an ordered ranking just like standings or anything else. So last year, the Giants' third baseman ranked 24th in weighted on base, 23rd in WRC plus. Matt Chapman is not an elite hitter anymore. He's not. But Matt Chapman, since the beginning of 2021, 323 weighted on base, 110 WRC plus. Like, at a minimum, this dude is a significant upgrade with the bat. He's also an elite defender at third base. So Matt Chapman, definitely an upgrade at third base. Then you go look at Jorge Soler. Not the best hitter in baseball, but last year really seemed to optimize some things with the Marlins. He hit a lot fewer infield fly balls, which means he was squaring up the baseball a lot more. He was one of the few guys in baseball, one of 18 hitters in baseball that finished in the top 75 in expected weighted on base against fastballs, changeups, and breaking balls. So he sees all pitch types well. He's not going to play great defense, but he's sort of similar to Teoscar Hernandez in that sense of you're going to DH him when you get the opportunity and you'll live with the defense if the bat's there. And then we're not even talking about probably their biggest offseason addition with Young Hoo Lee, who's coming over from overseas. One of the most mature approaches at the plate that I think we'll ever see in the big leagues, and I think it'll translate right away. Going to be a good defender. He's never going to strike out. I can't wait to see what his under a half strikeout prop is going to be day to day, because if it's anywhere near plus 100, it's going to be an auto bet every single day for me. So I've talked for probably 20 minutes at this point about the Giants. This is a team that has a lot of potential to be very good. They've had roughly a 500 record each of the last 2 years, and they've been a pretty bad team each of the last 2 years. Now I feel like they have some real talent. Health is obviously always an unknown, but there's a lot to like about this team, in my opinion.
And I just wanted to, since I'm going to steal this from your Substack, in your right, but just to go to, I like I said, we talked on the phone. I started really liking this Giants team the more I talked about it, the more I looked at it. Lee has struck out in 7.6 of his plate appearances or fewer since 2019 in the KBO, and he's walked in at least 10.5% of them. So he doesn't strike out. He can walk. I mean, just like Commish said, I almost said sauce. Like Commish said, the approach is just absolutely amazing. And then if you just take a look at like on the surface, like he just went through all the numbers and stuff. Like Logan Webb is a nice, good right-handed arm. Blake Snell going to come at you from the left side. Jordan Hicks, power arm from the right side. Kyle Harrison, power arm from the left side. So you're getting this right-lefty mix, and you get the same thing in the lineup. Lee's a lefty, Soler's a righty, Wade lefty, Chapman, Conforto, Estrada. It's all back and forth, and Patrick Bailey's a switch hitter, but nobody really cares about Patrick Bailey's bat. It's all about his defense at this point. So if Patrick Bailey can hit 230 with like 15 bombs, I think that would take it a year. The only question that I have is, why is Nick Ahmed have a spot on this roster? Like, he's never been good. He's not going to be good in 9 years in the league. So I don't know why they didn't keep Brandon Crawford. That kind of bothers me a little bit. Obviously, Brandon Crawford is not the player that he once was, but the only thing that bothers me about the Giants is it's the little things that I hear about. They lose Brandon Crawford. They fire their fucking play-by-play guy in the stadium that's been there for 25 years. It's all these little things that I don't like about the Giants. But the more that I look at their team and their pitching and all that stuff, it's like, man, this team is actually like really, really good. And this was a team that I was like going into the year being like, man, this team is terrible. They're not going to be able to do anything. I didn't really worry about the whole Soler signing. But I just think that when you put them all together with Lee and Soler and Chapman, and I actually think that Michael Conforto is a lot better baseball player than people think. I mean, if he can hit like 260 and slug over 400, I mean, the Giants are going to be in business. So very curious to see what Soler looks like with all that wind and stuff there, with all that power. But yeah, this Giants team is a lot more interesting than people are giving them credit for. They're definitely not a team that I'm going to be fading without taking a lot of consideration into that. That's for sure.
Well, I agree. So,
yeah.
All right. We got 3 minutes tops on the Rockies.
Yeah. Give me your thoughts. They suck. Nolan Jones is a star. So I would watch him as much as possible. I know he's hurt right now, but he's their left fielder. He's awesome. Chris Bryant should be playing first base. I actually think that Chris Bryant has like a decent year. He came out, he said some weird things about the organization and stuff like that in the past.
Kind of aggressive. He's been combative this spring.
Yeah, I think that we're going to see a little bit of a better Chris Bryant this year. I think that I think that Chris Bryant, we're good for like 280 and slugging at like a 260, or I'm sorry, 260, a 460 slug or something like that. I'm maybe 20 homers out of Chris Bryant, but that's pretty much it. It's just really hard. The rotation, Freeland, Quantrill, Gomber, Feltner, Dakota Hudson, all names that they're all mediocre guys that have been in the league 3 or 4 years that nobody else wanted. And the bullpen, or arm barn, as some like to call it, has just a whole bunch of guys. So that's how I feel about the Rockies.
Yeah, this is the worst team in baseball.
Marlins are there too.
No, I'm telling you, this might be the worst. And we've lived through some pretty bad Baltimore teams, some pretty bad Houston and Chicago teams. We've lived through the recent Oakland A's debacle. This is probably, like I'm saying, like 60% chance the worst roster I've seen on opening day. And I really mean that. I really mean that. This team has no upside whatsoever. I agree with you on Chris Bryant. I think he could have a decent season. I have never seen a team try less to field a competent pitching staff than what we've seen Colorado do this year.
And here's the thing with Colorado. They're so far behind on everything. You look at what the Dodgers have doing, right? Okay. The Dodgers probably spent 2.5, 3 years with the whole Yamamoto Ohtani thing. That thing was planned, everything. They knew that was going to happen. This Colorado team, they sell out a lot. Like a lot of people go to these games. So there's like no reason for management or ownership to spend money because people just come to the ballpark all the time. And they've put all this trust into their general manager and stuff like that. And it allows them to be complacent and they don't do all these advanced analytics and all that stuff that some of these other teams are doing. And they're falling farther and farther behind and they don't seem to care. Why? Because people still go to the games. And if you got people coming to the games and everybody's getting paid and all that stuff, they're not going to try to field the winner out there. So I really feel bad for some of the players and stuff, but I don't think it's going to change anytime soon either.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the last thing that I'll touch on with the Rockies, and then we can move on to more interesting teams. A couple need to know things. One, Kyle Freeland, his velo was up pretty significantly during spring training. This has never been a guy that he's never been a guy who struck out 30% of the guys he's faced. Obviously pitches in Colorado for roughly half his game, so the upside is certainly limited, but it's worth noting if you look at his velo back when he was a respectable pitcher and actually had a Cy Young caliber season mixed in there at one point as well. The velo was up around 92 miles an hour, and you can see the sharp decline the last couple of years. Well, he was pretty vocal this offseason about getting his shoulder strong again. I guess he just hasn't been healthy the last couple of seasons. You can see during the spring, his velo was up over 3 miles an hour on all of his pitches. Talked a lot to the media about how good he feels. So if there's one guy where maybe it won't be an automatic fade every single time he's on the mound, it's Kyle Freeland. But the rest of these guys are absolutely terrible. You mentioned Gomber. You got Contrill in the line in the rotation. Peter Lambert might get some innings in the rotation. It's embarrassing. None of these guys are going to strike out more than 20% of the guys they face, and it's probably giving them too much credit to think they're even going to get close to 20%. Now, the reason I bring this up is because there's a debate among a lot of people in baseball about, are we obsessing too much about velocity? We're not. We're not obsessing about velocity. Teams are obsessed with preventing runs. The reason velocity comes up so much is because if you can't get strikeouts, you can't prevent runs very well. This is a list of guys last year who had a sub 20 K percentage. The only guy on this list, 31 guys that threw at least 100 innings last year, the only guy with the sub 4 FIP, Kyle Hendricks. The relationship between K percentage and expected ERA, almost a perfect line. It almost looks like I made a fake graph here just trying to prove my point. Almost the same thing with FIP, a little bit less strong of a relationship. So all of this is to say, if a team has at least four pitchers that are not going to get strikeouts in their starting rotation, it's not going to go well. And then you add in the fact that there's, other than Nolan Jones, is there a competent, and Chris Bryant, other than those two, there's probably not a competent hitter in that lineup. Charlie Blackmon is still about league average, but I mean, it's like he's on the verge of retirement. This team has zero upside. I mean,
maybe Brendan Rodgers,
upside.
maybe.
There's no upside with this team. I think even some of the really bad teams in the league this year, like Washington and Oakland and the Angels, like there's guys that you can point to and you're like, if this goes right, maybe they win 75, 80 games. Like maybe they surprise us. There's absolutely no path to the Rockies surprising anybody. They might have a halfway decent record because they play half of their games at Coors, but if my bold take is that the Rockies will set a new major league record for fewest wins on the road in a single season this year.
I can see that. I could definitely see that. That's for sure. So I will say, don't tell anybody. I like Rockies game 1 against the Arizona Diamondbacks tomorrow, just so you guys know. I don't know when this is going to get posted, but if you see it before, just know I'm on the Rockies at plus like 205. And
I actually mine too, because Freeland's on the mound. And we
just
talked about how much
Freeland, it's Freeland, the guy who's got all the extra velocity coming his way, and Gallen, the guy that I'm going to be fading, and it's like a perfect little marriage.
Yep, plus 200. So give it a shot. We'll see what happens on opening day. But enough about this division. We like the Dodgers, we like the Padres, we like the Giants, the Diamondbacks, and the Rockies not so much. What about the NL Central?
Man, where to start with the NL Central? Where to start? I guess we could start with the Cardinals. It's not. I said this about the other Central too. Both of these Centrals, both AL and NL, it's just really hard to get a read. I came into this podcast like the last couple of days thinking it was going to be the Cardinals. And the more I look at it, the more I just feel like you should just be taking a shot. If you're trying to bet a division future, I'm sorry. If you're trying to bet a future, I would take one of the teams that have like, I know this sounds crazy, but like the Pirates or the Brewers, or something like that. And I guess we can just start with the Cardinals, because they're the first team that I think that is going to be decent. I can see the Cardinals being decent. Why do I say that? Well, I always start with the pitching. Michaelis, Zach Thompson, Lance Lynn, Steven Matz, Kyle Gibson, Sonny Gray Sonny Gray's hurt. I just feel like none of those guys are very good, but they all have lots and lots of major league service time. Kyle Gibson, 10 years. Lance Lynn, 12 years. Michaelis, I think 7th or 8th year. So all these guys are veteran pitchers. And I'm not trying to make a case that they're going to be like award-winning pitchers, but if they're all giving you around like a 3.9 to 4.1 ERA, and they're eating innings for you, and you're not having to deploy that bullpen over and over again on a nightly basis, I think that's going to really help them. Helsley, Gallegos, Kittredge, Romano, like it's Jojo Romano, but regardless, I still think that's like a solid bullpen. I mean, look at Hensley. I mean, expected like a 3.3 ERA. I mean, if he goes like 60, 70 innings and he's getting, 80, 85 strikeouts, multiple strikeouts every time he goes out there, like, yeah, I can see it. I just don't know what to think of the lineup. Like, and that's where I start finding myself. Like, I don't know. It's just really hard for me. Do I trust like Nolan Gorman? Yeah. But Nolan Arenado, very good third baseman. We understand that he had back issues last year. Wilson Contreras, kind of up and down at times, not really a bat that I trust. Brendan Donovan, decent, but I mean, if he can bat 300, I'll take that. But I don't need his 11 home runs and a guy that's not really stealing a whole bunch of bags at the top of my lineup and feeling comfortable about it. Jordan Walker is a guy that I just don't know how I feel about him. I understand that he had his nice long hit streak at the beginning of his career, and I expect him not to be terrible. I think that he slugs for 460 or something like that, but I don't really know what to expect from him from his average, as far as that goes. Victor Scott, really cool story. He's going to be a rookie, fifth round draft pick for them. But him and Mason Wynn, both of those guys, essentially rookies. I'm just not really sure. And that's center field and shortstop, two of the more important positions in Major League Baseball as far as defensively. So if those guys aren't good defensively and then they start struggling at the plate, then you can like really see that like the Cardinals aren't really going to be that competitive. I will say Dylan Carlson, Tommy Edman, Lars Nootbaar, all on the injured list right now, along with Sonny Gray. So, and then they have Kenyon Middleton, who's actually came over from LA. I'm pretty sure he was there. Maybe
and he's a pretty good reliever. Like that's not an insignificant guy to have on the IL to start the year.
Exactly. So there's a lot of pieces that for the Cardinals, like if they were to be healthy, I mean, I just named 6 guys, 3 position players, 3 pitchers. If they're healthy, I can see them being a decent ball club. I can also see the rookies having, the rookies / second year players, whether it be Walker, Scott, or Wynn, struggling at times, and then everybody else struggling. And then maybe they're struggling and Arenado's hurt and, or whatever. So, I trust the Cardinals organization to like make the right decisions, but at the same time, if we're talking about just in a vacuum of this year, I'm not really sure what to think of this team. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the Cardinals?
I'm trying to convince myself to like somebody in this division.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's not the Cardinals. I can tell you that. Last year, I think the one thing with the Cardinals is like the New England Patriots in football, for the longest time, they had the Patriot way.
Mm-hmm.
And then once Tom Brady left, you realized the Patriot way had a lot more to do with Tom Brady than it did with this nebulous culture that everyone assumed was
right
inherent in the Patriots locker room, right? Like Tom Brady was a huge part of that Patriot way being enforced on a regular basis. the Cardinals have been really, really good for a long time, but they don't have a thing that makes them really good, right? The Yankees the Yankees have had pretty good player development systems. They've gone out and bought big guys. The Dodgers throw money at player development. They throw money at big free agents. They can win. The Rays can fix anybody that throws a fastball and a slider and get the most out of a pitcher. The Giants are very analytically sound. Like, my point with that is, like, successful organizations tend to have a thing. They tend to have a way of making sure that their success is repeatable. The Cardinals really don't have a process. Like, they've never really spent big. Their payroll is usually around the league average. They don't get great free agents. They don't have the best player development systems. They've had some good trades, bringing in guys like Arenado and extending them and things like that. But now that Yadi Molina's not there for the first time in forever, now that Adam Wainwright's not there in forever, first time in forever, Pujols was gone, came back, and now he's gone again because obviously he retired. There's not these enforcers of culture in the locker room. And even last year with Adam Wainwright still there, I think the dysfunction in the clubhouse was so overlooked because everyone thinks, like, we almost think about this in like a Cardinal way, right? The same way as a Patriot way. And it just wasn't there last year. And I think the best example of this is you signed Wilson Contreras to a 5-year, $87.5 million contract. There's this big deal made in the offseason about how he's promising he's going to catch most of the games and that the Cardinals front office really wanted a catcher who was going to take defense serious when he came over. Well, what happened? A month into the season, you had the Cardinals starting pitching staff went to management and said, hey, we don't want this guy catching for us anymore because he wasn't a good framer. Allegedly, we found out from different guys later in the season that apparently Contreras was calling pitchers that the pitchers didn't throw, so he'd call for a cutter and a guy wouldn't have a cutter. I mean, just next level dysfunction, right? And the Cardinals, I think it's important to note because you talked about the most important positions on a diamond defensively: catcher, shortstop, center field. The Cardinals have been adamant for the longest time that the catcher should call the game, which is not universal across Major League Baseball. There are some organizations where every single pitch is called from the dugout, or they have a game plan where you know that you're going to go to X pitch and X count, X situation. They trust their catchers to call games. So when the starting pitching staff thinks Wilson Contreras is doing such a bad job that they essentially write a letter or they go to management, whatever that process was, and we say, we don't want this guy catching anymore, that is problematic. I think even more problematic is the fact that lasted about a week, and when they put Contreras at DH, and then he was catching again, and then he caught for pretty much the rest of the season before he got hurt. So I don't think the culture's there anymore. I think a lot of people are just expecting the Cardinals to be much better in 2024 just because the Cardinals are always pretty good.
Exactly.
I don't think that's going to happen, man. I think you hit it on the head with Arenado's getting older, the exit velos, the batted ball rates, all that stuff has regressed a little bit. Goldschmidt going into his age 36 season, he's still a very good hitter, but he's not an MVP candidate anymore. You mentioned the guys on the injured list. We talked about the Rockies pitching staff and their lack of strikeouts a few minutes ago and how problematic that was. Well, last year, you know who ranked 29th in K percentage as a pitching staff? The Cardinals.
And they also had their bullpen worked a heavy workload last year as well.
So I'm not very high on this team. 85.5 wins, over under 85.5 wins. You're pretty much at that win total in this division. You're expecting them to win the division, which you see reflected in the odds. I don't think there's a worse bet that you could make preseason as far as teams go than a 135 or a plus 150 price on them to win the division, because I just don't think they're very good. The defense is going to be abysmal. You mentioned guys like Jordan Walker. The guy can hit, but I'm telling you, this guy is one of the worst defenders in the outfield in Major League Baseball. The infield defense, Mason Wynn, I think, is going to be an elite defender at shortstop. But if Arenado's defense keeps regressing because of his back, if Goldschmidt continues to be a liability at first base, like Wilson Contreras, we know is a liability at the most important position on the diamond, can throw some runners out. But as far as pitch framing goes, he's just bad. And there's just so many holes in this roster that for me, to expect a 15-16 win jump in victories from last year to this year, I think you're just asking a lot, especially with Oliver Marmol, the head coach, the manager of the team. I just don't have a lot. Not that I don't have respect for him. Like, I think that's inappropriate to say, but I just don't know if he's the guy who's going to get the most out of these players.
Well, and it's not like the Cardinals were very good defensively last year either. So it's not like,
Right.
I mean, they were in the,
But that's been a staple,
third,
like that
so.
with Yachty and,
Exactly.
in the like that's been part of their culture. Like the part of the culture of the Cardinals has been their defense. I mean, what was it 4 or 5 years ago? I think they had 6 or 7 former Gold Glove winners on the field at the same time. Like that's been the way the Cardinals have built teams in the past.
Yeah, and it's just not the same. And I think losing Yachty is going to be huge, or was huge for them, and it's going to be something that's extremely hard to replace. There's no question about that.
I agree. Well, but if not the Cardinals, then who? What about the Cubs? They're that second team. Like if you're not picking the Cardinals, it almost feels like you have to pick the Cubs in that division.
And that's where, like, I guess as far as price is concerned, or I guess that would make sense, but. As far as the Cubs are concerned, like I'm not really sure what to do with them. I had them at like the 83 mark. I mean, they were, not a very, they were a decent team last year, but some of the metrics say that they got kind of lucky. Only the Padres and the Royals finished with a better Pythagorean win expectancy, which, it's a negative number that normally points to luck, but if I just don't know if I can get there with the Cubs this year. They were a team that probably could have made the playoffs last year. And I think Stroman obviously took a crap in the second half, and that didn't help. So then they bring in Shohei Imanaga, who's definitely an upgrade. They were able to bring back Cody Bellinger, who's always perfect. But I just don't feel like they are that much better than they were last year. I actually think they might be a little bit worse than they were last year. Last year, their line was 77.5, and now it's up, 5-6 wins or something like that, whatever it is now. I don't really know that. Again, I always start with the pitching. Do I trust Justin Steele? I need to see one more year out of it. If he's a sub-4 ERA pitcher, I need to see another year at it, because I have him slated as like a 3.8 ERA guy that's going to give you 180 innings and maybe like 160 strikeouts, which isn't that very impressive to me. Kyle Hendricks and Jordan Wicks, both guys, one of them, obviously Hendricks, a very long-time veteran, knows how to pitch, essentially is going to be eating innings for them. Wicks is one of these guys that hasn't been around, but he's a first-round draft pick. Everybody seems to like him. It's the next two guys that I think are huge, Imanaga and Assad. That Assad, that I think that he was a Mexico. He pitched in Mexico for a little bit and whatnot. But I think that if Assad can pitch well, and Imanaga is, or however you pronounce his name, I apologize, both of those guys can stay under 4 ERAs, and Assad can give you 100+ inning, and Imanaga can make all of his pitches and stuff. Because that's the one thing with Assad, he hasn't pitched very much. So I don't really know what to do with him as far as how much the expected workload for him. But the bullpen as well, closing is Alizé. Again, not a guy that I'm like super high on. He seems to get a lot of strikeouts, which is good. Same thing with Hector Neris. But are they going to keep Hector Neris? And that's where I start worrying about with these teams when we talk about this division as a whole. Like, what if the Cubs don't start very well and they have a guy like Hector Neris who's been pitching well, but they can go out and trade him for something even better? They have guys like Drew Smyly in the bullpen as well that obviously started last year, more than a couple of games for them, and looked well. Mark Leiter is one of their Mark Leiter Jr. He's one of their, I guess, younger arms and whatnot that's going to be in there, but he didn't really look good last year. He had an over 4 ERA. So I'm just not really there with this Cubs team. I honestly feel, and I'm not going to go any more of this, but I honestly feel like the other two teams that we haven't talked about in the Reds and the Pirates have better as far as the division number. I think that they're a better bet because I really think a lot of this is a flip of the coin. But the bottom half of this Cubs lineup is absolutely atrocious with Bush, Horner, Tauchman, and Gomes. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just not there with them. Like, I honestly think that they're all going to probably hit 240 or under. And I don't really know what you can really expect of them as far as slugging wise. I think you're going to have like career years out of Happ, Suzuki, and Bellinger. Because once you get past those three, Morel and Swanson are just, in my eyes, just strikeouts waiting to happen. And I think that if Suzuki and Bellinger and Happ start having good years, you're going to see people start pitching around them and going after Morel and Swanson and trying to get those strikeouts. And if they can have one or two guys on, if they can get Morel or Swanson to strike out and Bush or Horner to roll over, I think you're going to see that a lot. So it's just really, really hard for me to like this Cubs team.
I agree. I don't think they're a very good team. The pitching is a little bit of a concern. I think I might be a little bit higher on their bullpen than you are, but I wouldn't die on the hill trying to counter any of your points. I think
there's pieces there. I won't argue that. There's definitely pieces.
Yeah,
I still got to see it first.
There's no stability. There's always going to be relievers that stand out and break out year over year, but it's not a team that I'm looking at like, oh yeah, 90 wins for sure going to the postseason. You mentioned Cody Bellinger. I think Cody Bellinger is one guy worth highlighting on this team because it seemed like there was a big hoopla this past offseason of like, how does Cody Bellinger not have a contract? Why are the Cubs not more eager to bring him back? And of course they did, but that guy who you mentioned earlier from San Francisco, Michael Conforto, it's a pretty decent comp for Cody Bellinger. You can see last year, so expected weighted on base is...
People aren't going to like that one.
I know. But it's one of the most predictive metrics year over year. When you're looking at a metric that's going to hold, it's really like, I know a lot of people use WAR and they use WRC plus and things like that. Expected weighted on base is a really, really strong metric year over year for hitters. Cody Bellinger and Michael Conforto, nearly identical last season. I bring this up because there's not a whole lot of people that really respect what Michael Conforto did for the Giants last year. And part of it is because Conforto started the year really well and then really fell off towards the end of the year. Part of it's because Cody Bellinger played in Chicago, not on the East Coast, but like in a market that the East Coast appreciates more with only the 1 hour time difference. And Cody Bellinger's a former MVP, and he's got the bigger name, and he had those fun commercials a few years back. I think it was with Christian Yelich. And so Cody Bellinger got $80 million over 3 years with a couple of opt-outs, but I think it's a mistake to think that Cody Bellinger is going to be an impactful player the way he was last year, where he really outperformed a lot of his expected stats. I don't know, man. And he's supposed to be one of the better hitters on this team. I think Seiya Suzuki is undeniably probably the team's best hitter. Hits fastballs well, off-speed pitches well, breaking balls well. I think one thing to note, he came over, he struggled a little bit in his first year in the big leagues, and then really seemed to take off last year. I think there's even more in the tank. One thing we saw with Masataka Yoshida last year as well, these guys who come over from the Japanese leagues and the Korean leagues, they're used to playing in usually one or two time zones. Then they come over to America. It's a new process for them to be playing in, a 7 p.m. Eastern game on the East Coast is a 10 p.m. Eastern game on the West Coast. Traveling between those time zones is an issue. Not playing in domes as frequently is something that I've seen cited by players who have come over. There's also the fact that a lot of most major league teams, when possible, fly out of cities the night after a series ends rather than the next morning. That's something that's also unique to American baseball relative to the rest of the world, to my understanding. So a guy like Suzuki, I think, is phenomenal. High contact, can hit for power, average, really good approach at the plate. But there's really not a whole lot else on this roster. I also like Ian Happ, but Yan Gomes behind the plate doesn't inspire much confidence. Patrick Wisdom, if and when he's on the field for however long he's on the field, will hit some dingers when the wind's blowing out at Wrigley, but you can't really count on him for much else. The defense should be pretty good up the middle with Horner and Dansby Swanson, but the pitching staff is a question mark, I think, to put it lightly, and the defense is probably overall middle of the pack. It's just a very average team, in my opinion, and not a team that I think typically when you're looking at a team to win a division or make the playoffs, there's some really appealing qualities that they have, and I think the Cubs are just very vanilla across the entire roster. There's some holes, there's some things to like. There's nothing that you can really point at and say, wow, that's embarrassing. They're so weak in this area. But there's also nothing that you can look at and be like, damn, I wish my team had X hitter, or I wish my team had, this collection of pitchers or whatever. So I think their win total at 84.5 is right about where it should be. But I guess we'll see. That division's so bad. Someone's going to have to win 85 games, and it might be the Cubs. Maybe. We'll see.
It's funny that someone's going to have to win 85 games, and that's probably true. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw one of these teams win the division with like 83, 84. Like it really wouldn't. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying like it really wouldn't shock me at all in any way, shape, or form. You want to talk about some Reds baseball? Because they're another team that like very, very intriguing. Don't really how do I say this? Like I think it's really cool that they spent the money to try to get better, but why are we paying Frankie Montas? What was it, $13 million this season? $16 million?
And he's starting on opening day.
I mean, come on, bro. So, but anyway, the Reds. First and foremost, the Navoli Marte situation is just a killer. I guess it makes sense with the Candelario signing and stuff. I guess probably they had an idea of something was coming, but an up and coming third baseman. He was like one of my favorite prospects. Being suspended for PEDs really is a kick in the nuts to that team, just because of this whole team is about young talent. That's what they're what they're doing. But let's just start with that pitching staff that I talked about. I don't think they should have paid Frankie Montas $13 million. I think it's at $16 million total or whatever it is, especially when we just saw Blake Snell and Montgomery go. Obviously, we didn't know this. They signed Frankie Montas much earlier in the year, but it's just crazy to think that that's how much money he really got. Yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. So, but I do think that he should be decent. He's a 6-year guy. I think he's just going to eat innings for them. But obviously they see something in him, but he's not the guy I want to talk about. It's Hunter Green, Graham Ashcraft, and Andrew Abbott and Nick Lodolo. Lodolo obviously hurt right now. He should be back sooner or later. Brandon Williamson's another guy. Both of those guys are lefties, which I like lefties more than righties just personally. But both those guys are lefties. Yeah, well,
it's a baseball thing. That, if you're left-handed, you're just going to keep getting opportunities over and over and over again.
Exactly. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, if those guys come back, you have Hunter Green, who again, first-round draft pick. Same thing with Hunter Green. I'm sorry, Graham Ashcraft. He wasn't a first-round draft pick, but he was one of the draft picks of this team. They've just really done a good job of building this team through the draft and free agency. Hunter Green, I really expected him to take another jump up this year. I mean, he's probably going to pitch 150 innings and have close to 200 strikeouts. Probably not 200. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's how lethal that kid can be. Graham Ashcraft
at 189.5 for the season.
Really? Oh, okay. So yeah,
they're expecting some more volume out of him. Only threw, what did he throw? 112 innings last year, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say it couldn't have been that many because I penciled in 150 for him, and I thought that might be a little bit much, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I think he threw 125 and 112. Yeah, here, I'll pull it up. You keep talking. Sorry.
So, and then, Graham Ashcraft, I still have hope for this guy. Obviously, some of the numbers aren't fantastic with him, but he did come up really big for this team in moments last year, a lot of different moments last year. So I do think that they can ride that momentum with him. Nick Martinez, he used to be a Padre. I've seen a lot of Nick Martinez over the last couple of years. He's a solid veteran arm that's going to eat innings for you. He's been in the league for 5 or 6 years now. He's probably going to give you a 2.5 ERA, and he's probably going to pitch anywhere from 130 to 145 innings. Again, just another solid inning eater. But the question is, can these guys give the bullpen give enough length so the bullpen isn't going to have to come in the 5th and 6th inning on a multiple day basis every single week? Because I do think that Alexis Diaz is a pretty solid, very solid, not only closer, but as far as the whole Major League Baseball is concerned, I think he's one of the better closers that a lot of people don't realize how good he really is. Emilio Pagan, another guy that not a huge fan of him, but him and Lucas Sims, both guys that are been around, know how to pitch, that you can throw in there 3 or 4 times a week and feel comfortable with them as well. Fernando Cruz is one of those guys that I feel like he can be either way. But then Brett Suter and Buck Farmer, another 2 veteran arms that aren't fantastic, but know how to pitch that aren't going to be overwhelmed, and they're going to be able to help the younger guys. And if all that happens, it was as far as the pitching staff, and they're just somewhat decent, you take a look at the lineup, and as long as they don't have like a whole bunch of sophomore slumps, I mean, this team is kind of loaded. Okay, maybe loaded isn't the right answer, but Jonathan India to start. I understand that he doesn't have a fantastic bat. He's probably going to barely bat 260, but in this team, in the lineup spot, he was a rookie of the year for this team. I just, there's something about that vibes check for him, and I really think that it's better to have someone like him up there than Cruz or Steer or Tyler, not Tyler Stevenson, but Cruz or Steer. I think it would be better to have India at the top of that lineup. Ellie De La Cruz, obviously, some people want to poke holes in him. I'm not one of those guys. I think he's one of the most electric players in baseball. I think he's one of the handful players in baseball that you have to watch on a daily basis because you just never know what you're going to see from him. I mean, just last year watching him steal second, steal third, steal home. I mean, there's the things that he does on a baseball field is absolutely amazing. Does he have quirks in his swing that he needs to fix? Absolutely. But regardless, I think that he's one of the more electrifying players in baseball. Spencer Steer, fantastic rookie year. I have a hard time believing he falls off that much. Jake Fraley batting fourth. Absolute fucking stud. Jake Fraley is hit, run, and RBI king. I bet him every single day last year when he played, hit it like 75%. And that is not an exaggeration. Jameer Candelario came over from the Cubs. He was with Washington, another solid veteran guy. A lot of veterans on this lineup to go with all these kids because after Candelario, who's a veteran, Will Benson, kid. Christian Encarnacion Strand, kid. Nick Martini, kid. Tyler Stevenson's not really a kid, but I just think that the Reds have a really nice mix of veterans and rookies on this whole roster that can really help each other and feed off of each other. I just don't know if what we're going to get from those pitchers that I named. I can see things going a little bit of both ways. So I probably have a little bit. I think the Reds are kind of a public darling as well because of what they did last year and the couple huge months that they had. But I still think that they're going to make a play for this division. Obviously, the pitching is going to be huge for them. So very curious to see how that works out.
We'll see. I mean, I think the one interesting thing with this rotation is this is in large part a product of Kyle Bodie, the founder of Driveline, was in Cincinnati for 2 years, took their minor league pitching staff across all levels from one of the worst expected ERAs in the minor leagues to one of the best. Yeah. I think it was 6th worst to 6th best in a span of 2 years. And now he's over with the Red Sox. So, you know, we mentioned in the Red Sox video, I think we did, but, you know, sounding good things to come probably for the Red Sox pitching development over there with guys like Cutter Crawford and Brian Bayo and guys like that. But yeah, the Reds, I mean, Hunter Green, nasty stuff. I think the biggest thing with him, he's going to have to be able to throw a third pitch at some point if he wants to be able to get through a lineup multiple times. We saw it again last year. He's, you know, very heavy fastball, slider. When the fastball and slider are as good as they are, you know, you're going to get swings and misses. You're going to get outs. But you've seen guys even like Spencer Strider who they force themselves to learn a new, you know, he's got the curveball now that he's adding to his arsenal this year because you know that you can't survive long-term in a rotation with only 2 pitches. Which is another reason why someone like Justin Steele, I'm with you. I want to see him do it for another year because you can't just be a 2-pitch guy and just continue to dominate the way he's dominated, in my opinion. So I think that's a minor concern for Hunter Green, but the guy touches 100 with a fastball, and that slider can make anybody look like a fool. So yeah, I like him a lot. Graham Ashcraft, I guess at some point we just have to admit that this guy is just never going to turn into a good pitcher. He's got some of the nastiest stuff, I think, in baseball, but he just cannot strike guys out. Some of it's related.
He just can't find his command. It's just so confusing to me too because his curveball is pretty decent as well. So if he just could command the damn thing, I'm sorry, it just bothers me.
No, you're good. I'm with you. I think it's part command, part sequencing with him. I think at some point we just have to stop expecting him to take that next leap. But for me, really, the Reds' offense last year was top 10 by a lot of metrics, not park adjusted metrics, and it probably never will be with. Rarely will be in
Cincinnati. That's not fair.
Yeah, with the launching pad there, but 10th in OPS, which is on base plus slugging, 11th in ISO, which, is a power metric. It's a good team offensively. I mean, I think you put it nicely with the nice mix of young players and veterans that they have. There's definitely going to be some expected regression with some of the guys who overperformed last year, but there's also enough youth on the team that I think as they continue to develop, it'll probably offset that to a degree. The biggest thing for me this year, you're going to hate me for this, Toast, and I think a lot of people are going to hate me for this. I am not an Elly De La Cruz fan. I think the guy's got immense potential. I think he's at least 2 years away from really unlocking this. I will concede one of the most fun players to watch in baseball, because you never know when you turn on your TV what incredible thing you're going to see from him. Whether it's a cycle, is he going to steal second, third, and home in the same inning? Who knows? It's gonna be fun to watch for the Reds this year. There are just some major concerns, I think, with his offensive profile. You can see his K percentage last year was.
I was gonna say the whole team's K percentage. I thought that's what you were gonna talk about.
Oh no, I mean you can if you want, if like with Elly being the poster child for this, but I mean he was god awful, 33.7% K rate. That was worse than almost everybody in baseball. And the rest of these names on the list, you can see Martin Maldonado, the Mickey Moniaks, the Bretton Doyles, the Jose Series, the Patrick Wisdoms, Joey Gallows. Like those are all guys that are closer to memes than they are to guys that we take seriously with the bats. No disrespect.
That was a good one.
But appreciate you, Toast. But you see, Elly De La Cruz not only has the poor bat to ball skills at this point in his career, but the launch angle and leads to this really high ground ball rate. So not only is he striking out a lot, but when he's hitting the ball, when he's putting the ball in play, it's on the ground far more often than it should. Which, again, he was 21 years old last year, and I think a lot of times we see guys come into the league and they hit too many ground balls or they don't make enough contact, and we can theorize that he's going to take that next step in the years to come. The problem with Elly De La Cruz, I don't think he's a switch hitter.
Yeah, I can see that. I can't remember where I read that. I wish I could give the guy credit, but he went into a whole article into that. And I think, you're not crazy. You're definitely not crazy, because there's no reason for him to be with the how he plays against lefties.
Yeah, look at these splits from last year.
Yeah.
Against right-handed pitching. Against right-handed pitching, he's already a perfectly fine bat. 255 average, above league average OPS, ISO, walks at a healthy rate, still strikes out a ton, but you can live with it when you got a 10% walk rate and you're hitting the ball out of the ballpark. But against lefties,
ISO.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Yeah.
Like that, very, very good. But against lefties, below the Mendoza line with his batting average, the OPS, the ISO, the walk rate, all of it is unplayable. And the K rate, he's striking out 40% of his trips to the plate. Really, really tough for me to get behind a guy like Elly De La Cruz heading into the new season. And again,
I think I lost Commish. Let's see if he comes back. If he doesn't come back, while he is coming back, let's see if he does come back, I guess I should say. Just be really careful with Cincinnati and their strikeouts, because that's the one thing with Cincinnati that's kind of bothered me. If you filter out guys that had over 100 plate appearances for Cincinnati last year, Will Myers, who isn't with the team anymore, led the team at 34%, but Elly De La Cruz at 33% strikeout rate, Will Benson 31 in the third, Christian Encarnacion Strand 28%, Matt McLean 28%. I mean, so the amount that this team absolutely strikes out is absolutely ridiculous. So they just really, really are going to have to fix that. I do think that they're going to get better with the strikeouts. And trust me, Commish is not crazy. He knows what he's talking about as far as Elly goes. But I still think that he is a must-watch thing. And the more the time that he plays, the better he's going to be. But I completely agree with Commish that he should probably stop switch hitting as well. Let's see if we can get him. Let's see. Hell yeah.
And we're back. So I think probably easiest to cut and then just restart with the Ellie analysis.
Yeah.
I think where we were.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll just say
like in the movies.
Unstable. Might just have to keep this in mind. Maybe my internet just is shit at 3 in the morning. Because I've people have told me that they do that, where like they give you less like internet resources in the evening, or like at non-peak time, so they do maintenance overnight and things like that. All right, I exited out of everything that's non-essential.
No, trust me, I know how you feel. I mean, I feel like some of it was my computer, but yeah, as soon as I switched from Wi-Fi to like plugging it into my router, my computer into my router, like things changed dramatically for me.
Yeah, people have told me that too. I got to figure out how I can get into an Ethernet port because there's not an Ethernet down where my computer is. But
here, I'll show you what mine looks like.
I know what they look like. Like I know how to set it up. I just don't have a port anywhere near me.
There.
Yep.
So I don't even know if it really does that much, to be dead honest with you.
It does. Like people who are actual tech people have told me that it makes a massive difference.
Okay. So. Well, that helps. Kyle told me that too, and he's kind of a tech person as well. But at the same time, like I got a new computer, and like I was using a Chromebook before, and that thing is like a child's play. Like this thing, it never skips. I click an internet website, and it's like that. It's crazy. When you're not used to that, it's like, damn, this is really nice. Like, dude, with my Chromebook, I couldn't even charge. I couldn't even have it plugged in and then be on the internet at the same time, and it'd be like super slow. If I unplugged it from charging, it would work fine. It's just whatever. So anyway,
different, man.
I hate computers.
All right, so we'll just cut and we'll pick up at like 1:34 in 30 seconds.
I'll write that down too. Cut 1:34 ish.
Yeah, it was 1 hour 22 was when shit hit the fan, and then we'll go 1:35. We'll go 1:35, picking it up.
Cool. 122 to 135.
You should just be able to cut those 13 minutes. So
yeah, it'll take probably Kyle about 2 seconds.
Sounds good. Well, all right, give me 2 seconds back in character. So, Toast, you're going to hate me. Some people are probably going to very much dislike my thoughts on Ellie De La Cruz, but I think he's at least a year or two away from realizing this latent potential that he obviously has. I'm 100% with you. I think he's an electric baseball player to watch. I think he's great for the game. Like you said, you never know. You're going to turn on a game with Ellie De La Cruz in it. Is he going to hit for the cycle? Is he going to hit a ball 120 miles an hour in the right field bleed? All things that he could do on a baseball field. My thing with Ellie De La Cruz is this guy strikes out a ton, and he hits a ton of ground balls. Typically not a productive profile for an MLB hitter. And the reason I say that is, so I'll pull it up here. You can see these are the guys who struck out the most often in Major League Baseball last year, at least 300 plate appearances. Ellie De La Cruz struck out more often than almost everybody. The only guys who struck out more than him, guys like Martin Maldonado, the Brenton Doyles, the Patrick Wisdoms, the Joey Gallos of the world, guys who are closer to a meme than they are to a respected baseball player. And you can see these guys, they just don't put up super great stats. So the guys who profile similar to Ellie De La Cruz, not a lot of them hit a ton of home runs last year. I think the most bet season-long prop that I've seen on the internet this winter, Ellie De La Cruz over home runs. The reason that is a very risky bet, even though it might not seem like a risky bet. So you look at guys last year, struck out a lot, hit a ton of ground balls. There's not a lot of guys who hit more than 20 home runs. You can see Nolan Jones had 20, Christopher Merrill 26, Giancarlo 24, Rick Mahone 23. But a lot of these guys are sub 20 home run guys. And that's before we even get into the splits with Elly De La Cruz against righties last year. Already a playable bat, 255 batting average. You can see above average OPS, really good ISO, healthy walk rate. Still struck out a lot, but not overly concerning given the rest of his tools. But against lefties, just unplayable. Below the Mendoza line batting average. The OPS and ISO numbers are ghastly. I mean, those are numbers that would get a guy cut if sustained for an entire season without his prospect pedigree. The walk rate is very poor. Striking out in 40% of your plate appearances just is not going to cut it. You have to wonder long term, is this guy actually going to be a switch hitter? I know we have recent examples like Cedric Mullins, who gave up being a switch hitter, and it's benefited him later into his career. I just think there's a lot of things to dislike about Elly De La Cruz and I want to clarify, at 21 and 22 years old. I'm not saying Elly De La Cruz is never going to be a really good baseball player. I think he's got some of the highest potential of any player in the league, but he strikes out a ton, hits a ton of ground balls, cannot hit left-handed pitching, and he's trying to bat right-handed. Those are really concerning things for me as related to 2024. 3 years from now, I might feel very different about it. But right now, I think this is a guy who's going to underwhelm expectations pretty significantly. Still muted, Toast.
My bad. And I'm not like I think that Elly De La Cruz is a MVP candidate or anything of that nature. I'm not arguing with anything you say.
And I'm not saying you are. I've just but
no,
people I've seen people say Elly De La Cruz is going to finish second in MVP voting or win the MVP.
That's just absolutely crazy to me as well. I would lean under on his home runs as well. I just think that what he can do as a whole on a baseball field is something, and Commish touched on it right away. He's just a kid. I mean, he is just absolutely a baby. But one thing I did want to touch on really quick as well is that the Reds, I think, have some of the more upside in this division. There's no question about that. But what bothers me is that all their young pitchers all have talent. They also have dealt with a lot of injuries, and they have injury issues or / concerns. And then on top of that, if you take a look at the guys that had 100 plate appearances or more last year, the strikeout rate is very concerning for more than just Elly De La Cruz. Elly De La Cruz was at like a 33% last year, almost 34%. Will Benson, 32%. I'm going to round up on all these. Will Benson, 32%. Christian Encarnacion Strand, 29%. Matt McClain, 29%. I mean, and I can keep on going down the list, but some of those are their best guys. So if even Spencer Steer at 21%. I mean, so if all these guys are striking out at least once a night, if not more, and they all go into collective slump or what have you, I just things can really crumble at really fast. So it's just one of those things where the height of this team could be very, very good, but the floor is also very, very bad at times. So it's just a matter of what they're going to get out of these young talent and how well they can produce on a day-to-day basis. But I think they're one of the teams that you're going to have to pay attention to for at least a while until somebody doesn't play well, I guess.
I agree. And their home ballpark, I think, is a tremendous advantage. I think people always talk about Coors as a huge advantage to the Rockies, but I think the Reds are one of those teams where it's tough to go in and win at Great American. No matter how good your team is, there's a lot of variance in a park that plays as small as Great American does with the home runs, especially to right field, man. I mean, it's a launching pad there when it gets warm out.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fun. And I think that also, I think the Reds from last year are going to get a lot of public love in general because of what they did and stuff. So it's just one of those things where I feel like I like the Reds, but in my head, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of other people that like the Reds too. So it's just really hard for me. I like getting behind the teams that nobody likes. That's the teams that I like.
Toast is like, who's the guy who batted 8th 3 days ago who might play again next week? That's going to be my favorite player this year.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, Toast, so how does a team like the Reds relate to a team like the Pirates? The Pirates have a lot longer odds to win this division. I mean, as high as 16, 18 to 1, depending what book you're looking at. They got some decent. Mitch Keller had I guess you'd call it a breakout year last year. They got Jared Jones is going to be in the rotation to start the year in Pittsburgh as well after a great spring training. Some decent talent in the lineup as well. Another O'Neal Cruz, an exciting young tall, lanky shortstop. Brian Hayes at third, Sawinski in center, Brian Reynolds, McCutcheon still there. Not a terrible baseball team, at least in my estimation, but what are your thoughts about them?
I the more I look at them, the more I like them. And I guess again, always for me, we're starting with the starting pitching. I'm a Mitch Keller guy. I can say that. I do think that he's going to continue to get better. I know that he's been in the league for about 3 or 4 years now. But he's a round 2 pick. I think he's like 65th or something overall or whatever. But so the talent is there. There's no question about that. Can he put it all together? I like what I've seen from him in the offseason so far. I think that we can expect a decent year out of Mitch Keller. I think it's a coin flip with Perez, but again, you're getting a veteran guy, veteran left-handed presence in that rotation that's probably going to be good to eat, I don't know, 150 to 170 innings as long as he stays healthy. So not a guy that's going to rack up a whole bunch of strikeouts or anything like that. But the whole situation is you're just trying to eat enough innings not to overuse that bullpen that Jared Jones kid, like he talked about, a second-round draft pick. And then honestly, Bailey Falter, Marco Gonzalez, I don't think it's a terrible 4-5. Obviously, we saw what Falter was able to do in Philadelphia last year. Nothing spectacular. He's still a young kid, but I really truly believe that Marco Gonzalez and Bailey Falter can both have an ERA under 4.4 pitch. I don't know how much Bailey Falter is going to pitch, but Marco Gonzalez is probably going to be able to pitch 140 innings or more if he doesn't get hurt or whatnot. And those are another 2 lefties in there that I think are going to be somewhat decent. And then if you get to the bullpen, you have an all-star in David Bednar. You have a very decent, I guess, setup man in Aroldis Chapman. Regardless of what you want to think of him, he's pretty damn decent. And then that Ryan Baraki kid, I'm not really sure how to pronounce his last name, but him and him and Hunter Stratton, I actually think are pretty decent. The Baraki kid's actually really good, but I don't think Stratton's that too far behind. So I do see a scenario where the pitching staff isn't really, I guess it'd say a liability for me. And then if you get to the offense, it should be fine. I mean, don't forget this offense to start the year was pretty damn good. And then obviously O'Neal Cruz went down. Well, I don't know. I don't put a lot of stock into what I see in spring training. I know Commish doesn't either, but O'Neal Cruz has been going off in spring training. I expect him to have a pretty big bounce back year after not being hurt, or after being hurt last year. And the Pirates as a whole finished 22nd in OPS last season. As long as they just get to like the 15 range, or just, you know what I mean? Add a couple, go from 22nd to 18th or something like that. You got Paul Skeens coming up in the minors. That Anthony Salametto kid, I can't think of pronounce how his name's. I know that there's a lot of scouts that really like him. So maybe next year is more promising for the Pirates. But when you're in a context of this division where I think there's a lot of questions to be asked about all these teams, and you're getting the Pirates at a plus 12, let's just call it 12 to 1 on your money, which is the next best is like plus 700 with the Brewers.
Yeah, again, I don't think 1. If you have Bet365, 18 to 1 on the Pirates.
I don't really think that the Pirates are going to win the division, but at that price, that's really them. Honestly, that's the only team I would bet in this division, because the Reds at plus 300 or whatever the number isn't good enough. The Brewers isn't good enough. I'm not playing the Cardinals at Cubs at anywhere close to those numbers. So if I gun to my head and I could only pick one team to win this division because of the price, it would be the Pirates.
Last year, I bet the Brewers were my main stake in this division, and I bet the Pirates small at 66 to 1 to win the division. So you best believe 18 to 1. I'm running it back again with these guys. Hot take: the season that everybody's expecting from Elly De La Cruz, I think we're going to get that from O'Neal Cruz.
And I like that he bats leadoff too. You're going to get like 600 plate appearances.
Yeah, and I just think we've seen more from him. He's a little bit older, so he's had a little bit more time to develop, which again, like, I'm not here to shit on Elly De La Cruz. I'm just trying to put things in perspective.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's a kid. Elly De La Cruz is still a child, almost. Elly De La Cruz, I mean, O'Neal Cruz is a little bit older. He's been around the block a little bit. He's only hitting from one side of the plate, which honestly simplifies things.
Yes.
Again, I'm not saying Elly De La Cruz is never going to figure it out, but when you're trying to figure it out from both sides of the plate versus just one side of the plate, it's an easier task at hand.
Well, and you have to give context to everything. If all you hear is the Reds are good and Elly De La Cruz is awesome, like there has to be other context in that conversation.
For sure. And I think with O'Neal Cruz, again, he didn't play a whole lot last year because of the injury that he suffered in April, but the little bit that we did see from him, we did see some pretty significant gains in terms of his approach at the plate. Was swinging at a lot more pitches in the heart of the plate, which you have to do if you're going to maximize the elite exit velocities that he has. And he was a lot more selective. These pitches in the shadow zone are very difficult to hit hard because they're not pitches that you can put the barrel of the bat on consistently, especially with how good major league stuff is. And then of course the pitches in this yellow part of the zone, those are considered chase pitches, so pitches that are nowhere close to being strikes. O'Neal Cruz really reined in his aggressiveness in a small sample last year. Again, remains to be seen if he's going to be able to do that over 150 games, but at least a little bit of evidence that he's moving in the right direction. I just think Elly De La Cruz, I mean, this is a guy he hit the hardest baseball in Major League history a couple of years ago, or was it last year against Atlanta off of Kyle Wright? He's got elite speed. His glove isn't he's got this amazing arm, but he doesn't have an elite glove. But I think when you're talking about guys who can really make an impact on a team, O'Neal Cruz, 2022. So this was not even last year, but the year before, when he was really raw at the major league level, ranked 24th out of 246 hitters in average exit velocity with at least 350 plate appearances. Ground ball rate, similar to Elly De La Cruz, was a little bit too high as a rookie, but he did pull the ball 7% more than the league average hitter that year. So there's things with O'Neal Cruz. It's going to be talking about the Reds and the Pirates back to back is tough with these two guys, but with O'Neal Cruz, I think there's a very clear path to him going from a guy who's hitting too many balls on the ground and not hitting 30 home runs to all of a sudden, if he can elevate the ball a little bit more, like we saw in spring training, which again, not to put a ton of stock into that, but if he's getting a little better ball flight, this is a guy who can go from a 25 home run hitter to a 40 home run hitter pretty quickly with the exit velos that he has. He can make or break this season for the Pirates. I think the pitching should be halfway decent, like you said, with Keller and Gonzalez and Martin Perez and Jared Jones. Like, I'm not looking at any of these guys to win any individual awards this year, but they should be able to eat innings, which should reduce the burden on the bullpen, like you said. I really like Henry Davis behind the plate. The bat, I think he's got a very good bat. You have Jack Sawinski's going to hit a bunch of home runs. Michael A. Taylor really solidifies the team defensively in center field. Brian Reynolds is very good. McCutchen brings that veteran presence, that culture enforcer like we talked about with the Cardinals. So there's things to like about the Pirates. And I can tell you, I find it a lot easier for me to talk myself into an 18-1 bet on the Pirates than, like a 2-1 bet on the Cardinals or a 2-1 bet on the Cubs. You give me 18-1 on the Pirates, and then if the Cardinals or Cubs prove that they're better than I think they are by the time May or June rolls around, I'll take the Cardinals at plus 100 on June 1st to win the division before I'll take them at plus 150 or plus 175 right now.
And honestly, if the more I look at this Pirates team, they have a nice mix of veterans. They have a nice mix of rookies in there. I'm just saying we saw this team start the year well last year, very well. They obviously regressed to the mean a little bit. Some of that had to do with the O'Neal Cruz injury, but O'Neal Cruz back, Brian Reynolds, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Zawinski, McCutchen. I mean, that's not terrible. If Henry Davis just gives them something at the plate, because he's really, really very good. I mean, a first-round draft pick, one of one. I mean, obviously the talent is there. And honestly, I do think that Michael A. Taylor is kind of underrated. I'm glad that you mentioned him in center field because he came over from Minnesota. Again, not going to blow the world off, but another guy that is a solid Gold Glove caliber outfielder that's a veteran presence in that lineup that I think that is going to be good for some of these younger guys as well.
Could not agree more. And you need a lot of really mediocre, like specialized skills type of guys to win games at the major league level. It's not like in basketball where if you have Kevin Durant, he can mask, or LeBron James, you can mask a lot of other deficiencies on the roster. In baseball, if you're Angels are a perfect example, right? If you have three really good players, but then not a lot of mediocre players, it's tough to win games on a consistent basis. So I'm with you. Pirates, I might be able to get behind them again this year. They're not my favorite city to root for, but I like the talent on this team for sure.
Again, and then this is all in a vacuum of this division. Do I think that the Pirates are good compared to the Yankees and all the or whatever you want to use? No. But in the vacuum of this division, I think they're just as live as everybody else. I mean, and even if you look at like the percentages of them to make the playoffs, I mean, do we really think that the Cubs and Cardinals have a respective 41 and 48% chance to make the playoffs? If you guys believe that, then bet them. But I don't think that that's even anywhere close. I would no more than 30% chance that the Cubs or Cardinals win this division. So the fact that all these projections make them out to be much better than I think that they are, I think you're getting a really nice discount on teams like the Pirates and the Reds, to be dead honest with you.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, we got one team left in this division. We don't have to spend a lot of time on them, but the Milwaukee Brewers, of course, they don't have Corbin Burns anymore. Probably no Brandon Woodruff for the entirety of this season. Freddie Peralta at the top of the rotation. Not a whole lot else to like there. Devin Williams, founder of the alien changeup in the ninth inning.
Love him.
Going to miss probably half of the season, if not more, with some injury concerns. The offense, they got Rhys Hoskins coming back from a torn ACL. There's not a whole lot of other names in this lineup that I think most fans will recognize off the top of their mind. Christian Yelich, of course, but he's no longer the player that he used to be. Willie Adames, I think people know because he's been in some higher profile trades, but there's not a whole lot of like in-your-face star talent here. Am I missing something? Or
Jackson Chourio,
yes.
I mean, if we're talking talent, I mean, he hasn't done anything yet, but the talent is supposedly there. They tell us.
But anything I'm missing with this team, or does this team look destined to probably win 75 or less games and miss out on the postseason?
I think they're missing the postseason. I think they are going to have a hell of a time trying to repeat anything they've done in the last 3 or 4 years. Again, losing Craig Counsell sucks. But I think what's his name? Pat Murphy. I met him in Nashville. What's his name? Pat Murphy. Yeah. Pat Murphy's a G who's wearing like a black sweatsuit all weekend. Just didn't give a hell. You got to respect people like that. It's like Calvin Sampson for Houston wearing a polo and sweatpants on national TV. You just got to respect a man that's willing to do that. Okay. Anyway, first and foremost, the reason that I think that the Brewers are going to have a really hard time this year is that I think that they've really benefited over the last 3 or 4 years of having very good starting rotation. And what comes good with starting rotation is length. And so what you have is you have multiple, whether it be Woodruff or Burns or whomever, Lauer, all these guys going deeper into games, Peralta as well. And you're not putting any pressure on your bullpen. You know your bullpen is going to have to go 6, 7, 8, 9 or 7, 8, 9, and that's kind of it. And I don't think that's going to happen this year. And I truly think that the bullpen is going to get kind of exposed with how much they're going to have to pitch this year. Again, not saying that I think that the bullpen is bad, but McGill, Payams, Uribe, I think that Uribe kid's going to be pretty damn good. He's one of these kids. I think he's from the Dominican, but I know that he's an amateur. He hasn't done much, but from what I've seen and what I've heard, the dude is an absolute stud. And then the same thing with that Peguero kid, Elvis Cabrero. He's kind of down on their depth chart, but decent. But my point to all this is that the rotation isn't nearly what it was. Freddie Peralta, I think, is a dark horse Cy Young winner or candidate. I think that he's definitely going to have like a 3.5 or under ERA. I think he's going to pitch 175 innings, close to 200 strikeouts. There's nothing. I think Freddie Peralta is going to have a fantastic year if he can figure out his control. But then after that, you have DL Hall that came over in the Corbin Burns trade that I'm pretty sure he was coming out of the bullpen at times last year, and now he's going to be expected to start for them. Colin Ray, I think he pitched in Japan or Korea last year. Not a guy that I really think can really do much for them. And then Jacob Junis and Joe Ross, two other guys that are both from the Giants. Both have been in the league a long time, but are good for about a 4.5 ERA or more. And again, if you have those five, you're just asking a lot from your bullpen. Wade Miley is still hurt. Brandon Woodruff is hurt. He's probably not going to be back for a while. I don't know what to get out of Wade Miley. I just think
not an ace, right?
No, he's definitely not an ace. But I really think that this Brewer team is kind of a fade for me. I think that they've lived on the edges for the last couple of years. They've had a very solid bullpen. They were able to get away with it with losing Hader. I think losing Hader, Williams, as long as Woodruff, Burns, I think that's just going to be a lot. Do I love what Jackson Chourio is supposed to be able to do as a 20-year-old? Yeah. He should be awesome. As a prospect, he's number 1 in the organization. He's number 3 overall, I think, in baseball. Same with Joey Ortiz, top 4 prospect in their organization. He's a top 50 prospect in Major League Baseball. He also came over from Baltimore. Joey Ortiz is a third baseman. He's going to bat 9th for them. Honestly, it just doesn't make sense. I think Jake Bauers should be starting for them. Rather, I understand he's probably not going to play first base, but I really do feel like he should be in the outfield somewhere. I know it's not easy to sit down Yelich or Frelick or obviously with the new kid Chirino, but I think what Jake Bauers was able to do with the Yankees, he should be getting some decent playing time. But I just really think that this, like I said, I just think that this Brewers team is coming in for a rude awakening, and it might be a very long year for Brewers fans.
I agree. And if there's a Milwaukee Brewers fan who thinks that we're completely out of tune with this team and you're watching this, please let us know in the comments. Please. But I'm with you. I just don't see a ton of upside. Christian Yelich is nothing more than a league average hitter at this point. This is a team, and you mentioned it when we were doing our show prep. The length that they've gotten out of the starting pitching the last 3 years. So since the beginning of 2021, Milwaukee's had the 6th most innings thrown by starting pitching. And what that does is it protects the bullpen, regardless of how talented the bullpen is, protects them from overuse. If they're not talented, protects them from having too many innings, too many outs to try to get throughout the course of a season. Goes a long way towards trying to win baseball games. Going from a rotation of Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta, which was one of the best trios in baseball, to now Freddie Peralta, Wade Miley, and then whoever you want to insert as the third guy in that rotation. Hey, that's a huge step down. And now you don't have Devin Williams in the back end of the bullpen. Josh Hader's obviously not been there for a couple of years now. The offense, you mentioned some of these young guys that have a lot of potential. There's a ton of potential for the Brewers. I think 3-year, 5-year, 7-year outlook. This could be one of the better teams in baseball, one of the better organizations in baseball, but I just don't see it. I just don't see enough runs. I mean, this was a team last year that had, I think, better offensive pieces, and they ranked in the bottom half of the league and almost bottom third of the league in a lot of important offensive metrics as a team. This year, I just don't see a lot. I like Rhys Hoskins as a person. I like him as a player, but we've seen time and time again guys come off of lower half injuries and they struggle to elevate the baseball. It's not a just plug him in and hit 35 home runs because he's Rhys Hoskins type of guy.
And that's what's crazy about it, is that people are plugging, and I love Rhys. Like, my kid's name's Rhys, spelled the same way and everything. But to think that he's just going to step in here and get 600 plus 625 plate appearances and hit 35 bombs like he did in Philadelphia, I think is a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah. I agree. I think 77.5 wins for this team is optimistic. I don't want to shit on any team or organization, especially when they've lost some talent to injuries and things like that. But it's just difficult for me to see this team finishing close to 500 with the lack of high end pitching that they have, and there's just really not a lot of offense to like. I mean, even if these young kids play well, even if Hoskins performs better than I'm expecting him to in his first year back after a serious injury, this is maybe a league average offense with a below league average pitching staff. I just don't know how that gets you to 80 wins.
Not to mention the fact that you have a team, Commish talked about 1-run games earlier in this podcast. They're one of those teams that won 92 games. What was it last year? I think they won 92 games last year, and they were plus 11 in 1-run games. So it's one of those things where they have a lot of one-run luck as well with them. I just want to do one thing with the Brewers. Their bullpen is really good. Like, I'm not trying to make a case that they're not. My point to that was I think the length of the starting pitching is going to make it a lot worse for them, and they're going to have to pitch more than they're accustomed to pitching, and that's what's going to make them worse than we think that they are. But their bullpen, on talent alone, has a lot of talent there. There's no question about that.
I agree. And you're right. Third best record in 1-run games last year, and they were north of that 60% threshold that we talked about a little bit earlier in the show. So definitely a regression candidate, and that's before you factor in losing guys like Corbin Burns, not having Brandon Woodruff at all, and some of the other pieces that they've lost. So,
and on top of all of that, like I think you touched on it really briefly. Willy Adames has not only been traded multiple times, I think, but he's been in trade talks a lot.
Yeah.
And there's teams like the Dodgers that need a shortstop that might be willing to give out a couple guys that now that they have, I guess the Brewers have Wilson Contreras. I was just going to say the Dodgers signed Will Smith, so now they have a couple catchers they could get rid of, but whatever. My point is that if this team isn't doing well, I can see them selling off some pieces like a Willy Adames. And then if you take Willy Adames off that team, then they're really probably going to struggle to score runs. So, yeah, it's just really hard for me to get behind them. I
agree. Well, Toast, we're 5 out of 6 divisions into these previews at this point. We got one left.
It's the
your favorite team. Your favorite team in all of baseball, the Atlanta Braves, favored to win the NL East in 2024. Then we got the Phillies, the Mets, the Marlins, and the Nationals. The Nationals, of course, 125-1 to win the division. I mean, I think that might be the longest odds I've seen for a National League team to win a division in quite some time.
I assume you have Can I say one thing just really quickly, and then you can go? I just want to say, hi, Braves fans. How you doing? You look great. Can't wait to see you this year. Anyway, that's it.
The biggest Atlanta Braves fan in the world. He fronts as a Padres homer, but really he loves the Braves. They're near and dear to his heart. So why don't you start us off, Toast? I assume you have the Braves winning this division.
Yes, I do. I do have the Braves winning this division. I am not off my rocker completely. They won't win the World Series, but I do think that this team wins the division. I don't think we got to spend a whole bunch of time on this team, similar to the Dodgers. I will say that I'm worried about the pitching is what bothers me. It's the same thing that bothered me last year. The lineup is absolutely awesome. They're studs. Acuna is obviously an MVP candidate every single year. Ozzy Albies is one of these guys that just continues to play fantastic baseball. Austin, aka Rake Riley, is like one of my favorite players as well at the hot corner. My issue is I don't know if we're going to get Matt Olson at another 40-plus home run pace. I don't really think we see that. Not really the biggest Marcell Ozuna fan. I think Sean Murphy's really fallen off. I think we saw this team, how good they were with him being good at the plate. I just don't think that we're going to be able to see that again. And then Braves fans, just have fun with Jared Kelenic. Just enjoy that. But anyway, but going back to the rotation, Strider and Fried, I'm good with them. Like I'm not going to take anything away from them. Spencer Strider is absolutely fantastic. And the fact that he's adding a curveball now is going to make him even more dominant. I really think he's a top 3 or 4 pitcher in this league. I'm going to give him a ton of crap this year. There's no question about that, but you can hear me say it right now. He's definitely a top 3 or 4 pitcher in this league.
Make sure you clip this, guys. He's not going to say it again.
I probably won't.
Make sure you clip it every time Spencer Strider strikes out 10 and gives him 2 or less.
But my issue is Charlie Morton, Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez. Lopez, I guess you can make a little bit of an argument that maybe he has a coming out party in LA. I'm not going to argue that too much. But as far as Chris Sale is concerned, at no point has he looked good at times? Yeah, but he's not a guy that I can trust to go out there for a full year and pitch 25 to 30 games and give me 150 innings. If he does that for the Braves, so be it. But I'm just not really there. I understand that Charlie Morton doesn't really have a injury history, but again, I'm not thinking that this Braves team is going to be bad. When I say I don't really trust it, I'm talking about World Series are essentially your bust. So again, is the Braves good? Are they going to win the division? Yes. I'm not going to keep on going into it. The starters are average. The bullpen's average. The lineup is absolutely elite. We'll see where it lands. I'm curious to see where your thoughts are because everybody knows how I feel about the Braves.
It's always fun hearing you talk about Atlanta. Always. Look, this team hit 789 home runs the last 3 seasons. If you take it just back to last season, 307, over 50 more than the Dodgers, who were in second. Damn near almost 100 more than the Twins, who had the 3rd most home runs in all of baseball. This is a very, very deep lineup. They can hit for average. They can hit for home runs. They're going to walk. They actually made a lot of contact last year, which was, I guess, surprising considering they had some strikeout kings in that lineup the last couple of years before 2023. There's nothing in my mind that you can do to poke holes in this lineup. And I think if you get contributions from guys like Sean Murphy, if Michael Harris continues to progress well in his development, it's really, really tough to get this team out 1 through 9. except for Jared Kelenic. I co-manage a higher stakes fantasy baseball team with the guy. And it's one of our last picks. We just had to fill a roster spot, and he was adamant that we had to put Kelenic on the roster. And I had vetoed a couple of the other guys that he wanted to pick. So I was like, all right, like we'll live with Kelenic for a couple of weeks to start the year until he inevitably sucks wind, and we'll move on to another outfielder at that point.
I honestly believe they're going to have Duvall out there within a couple of weeks.
I 100% agree. I don't like to root against players. There's some guys that don't have a lot of upside. And I think if you don't figure it out within the amount of time and the amount of at-bats that Kelenic has been given, I think it's highly unlikely that he's going to figure it out at this point.
Yeah. I mean, again, and it's just one of those things where even last year with Kelenic, and trust me, I've watched Jared Kelenic very close. A lot of talent. I get it. But even last year, was doing fantastic, started figuring things out, and then does a stupid mental mistake, kicking a trash can or whatever the hell it was, and then taking himself out. It just seems like every time that there's something positive to say about Jared Kelenic, he goes and does something just absolutely ridiculous, and then it's his season shot. So, yeah. Braves are good, though. There's no question about it. The Braves are one of the best teams in baseball.
Very good. And I think the last guy I'll touch on, because everybody knows how good Strider is, everybody knows how good Fried is, everybody knows how good this team is. But I think Chris Sale, I know you're not high on him, and I get that you can't trust Chris Sale because of his injury history, but he's still been pretty good when he's been on the field. And yes. And I do think it's interesting. This time of year we talked about it on the American League show as well. A lot of people fall victim to this can go right and this can go right, and they never take a look at what could go wrong. If you're looking at what could go right with Chris Sale, he really seemed beat up about the fact that he didn't contribute a fair amount in Boston. And I saw him make a comment that he felt it was almost his obligation to agree to a trade to the Braves because the Red Sox hadn't got anything out of him. And at least this trade allowed them to get Vaughn Grisham and get some talent back for Chris Sale. I think Chris Sale is an extremely competitive guy. Every body of evidence, every piece of evidence we have from him suggests this guy is a fierce competitor. Him not being on the field is not because he's lazy. It's not an Anthony Rendon situation. Right. He's legitimately been hurt. He's gotten a little. Sorry to interrupt you, but I also think he's gotten a little unlucky with injuries as well. For sure. And I think he goes to Atlanta. Maybe they can treat him a little bit more cautiously. Maybe they don't push him into the sixth inning. Maybe he stays a little bit healthier. He still has really good swing and miss stuff. He still has pretty decent command. He's not an ace. He's not a co-ace with Spencer Strider or Max Fried at the top of the rotation, but he's probably one of the better number 3 or number 4 guys in a rotation, one healthy. If he is healthy, game changer for the Braves. I think this is the best team in baseball. They probably win 105 games if Chris Sale is healthy. And, they don't have any other catastrophic injuries. It'll be interesting to see with them.
I honestly think if I'm Anthopoulos and what's their manager's name? Snicker. Yeah. I would give Chris Sale his 1 through 5 innings and then make sure that he's good, because I will say, not that these guys are very good pitchers, but they're going to eat innings. Like AJ Smith, Shaver, Bryce Elder, Dylan Dodd, all these guys, third or better round draft picks or whatever. I guess Shaver was the 7th, but regardless, they all pitched in last year, so they should eat innings. So if they can save Chris Sale and have him healthy going into the playoffs, that gives them a very good 1, 2, 3 in that rotation. That might make me change my tune. I doubt it, but it might.
Nah, Toast will be picking, the team that just snuck into the playoffs on the last day of the season to upset the Braves in the first round. That'll be our show topic when we get to the postseason.
And luckily for me, it'll be the Phillies. So I'll have the.
So speaking of the Phillies, this is a team that has actually had more postseason success than the Braves the last couple of years. They even beat them in the postseason. Plus 300, plus 325, depending on the book. Even if you got Bet Rivers plus 350 to win the NL East. I know you picked the Braves to win the division. I have as well. But this is a team with arguably the best 1-2 punch in the rotation in baseball, with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. Nola coming off a little bit of a down year, but I expect big things from him. The offense is still as good as ever with Harper and with Trey Turner, and they still got Bryson Stott's coming on at second base. They have some guys who took some nice steps in the outfield as well last year. Kyle Schwarber's still probably good for 40 home runs. What do we make of this group in 2024?
I think that they are just as good. I mean, they haven't done anything. They haven't lost it. I think the only person that they brought in was, I think, Whit Merrifield and maybe somebody else, because I know they traded Jake Cave. But who's their star? Muto and Stubbs. So they might not even brought anybody else. But the only reason I say that is because I think there's something to that. I think that all these guys continuing to play together, it makes me trust them more. It's, again, always starting with the pitching for me. Wheeler Nola, like he said, absolutely fantastic. Probably not a better 1-2 punch in the league. Ranger Suarez, a veteran lefty that I kind of trust. He pitches kind of well in both home and away. Again, it's just one of these guys that I've seemed to come to trust a little bit in betting baseball. Christopher Sanchez is another lefty that doesn't have a whole bunch of experience, but he comes over from the Rays, and they seem to really like this guy. And so I think that he's definitely going to get a shot. And if he can pitch, 130 to 150 innings for them, I'm not really worried about this team. Again, Turnbull is not a free agent that came over from Detroit. He's going to be so-so, but what matters to me is that their bullpen is absolutely nails. And it doesn't even, Alvarado, Hoffman, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Gregory Soto, Matt Strom. Those are just some absolute bangers. And they've shown that they can not only pitch very well, they've shown they can pitch well in the playoffs. Craig Kimbrell is gone. Commish and I talked about this before. I truly, and he feels the same way. Like, this team should have been playing in the World Series last year. They probably could have won the World Series if they got there, and I truly believe that. But really bad decisions, and Kimbrell got used way too much, and they paid for it. But for me, they also have a couple guys in AAA as far as Colby Allard, Nick Nelson, and Max Castillo that should be coming up. Castillo, I think, is more of a reliever, and I think Allard is going to be too. But Nick Nelson came over from the Yankees in a trade. He should be decent. I just think that there's something to be said about this team that doesn't have a whole bunch of turnover, that's been in the NLCS the last 2 years. The hunger's got to be there. I really, really like this Phillies team. They're in a division with the Braves. And we're going to talk about a couple other teams in this division besides the Marlins that I think are somewhat decent. But regardless, if they weren't in the division with the Braves, I'd pick them as the division winners. But regardless, I do think that they go over 89.5 wins or whatever. As long as it's under 90, I'm good with the Phillies and their win total. I'm not, again, because they play the Braves, I'm not going to pick them as their season win total. But I have no problem taking this team to win over 90 games. There's no question about that.
Yep, 89.5 consensus line for the Phillies going into 2024. They're better than the Cubs and Cardinals, right? Even though they're not going to win the division.
Yeah, that's true.
You got that going for you, Philly. It sucks to be roadblocked by a team as good as the Atlanta Braves in that division, but the Phillies are plenty good in their own right, and I'm sure if they can win a World Series or two in the next 5 years, they'll take that over 10 division championships if that's all the Braves have to show for their efforts. The two things I want to highlight with the Phillies, we know how good the pitching staff is. We know that the vibes in Citizens Bank Park have been immaculate the last couple of years with their runs to the playoffs, and the starting pitching, the bullpen. They're just a really well-run organization that's all in trying to win right now in this window they have. Bryce Harper last year, fastest player ever to return to the field from Tommy John, came back in May, wasn't expected to be back till closer to the All-Star break. When he first came back, there was absolutely no power. And this is in reference a little bit to we just brought up Rhys Hoskins not too long ago coming back from an ACL injury and how guys can sometimes struggle to hit the ball out of the ballpark when they first come back. Harper had only 5 home runs his first 337 plate appearances back from the IL last year. Some people that concerned. It was definitely noteworthy at that point in the year, but not to worry, Philly fans. Second half of the season, you saw Bryce Harper, his power came back in full force after those first 337 plate appearances. Bryce Harper, 16 home runs, trailed only Judge, Matt Olson, Marcell Ozuna, and Kyle Schwarber during that stretch. So Bryce Harper back as good as ever. He's going to play first base, which should allow him to stay even more fresh throughout the course of the regular season instead of doing all that running in the outfield. So I think a good long-term move by the Phillies organization to have Bryce Harper at a less physically strenuous position, without a doubt. The other guy I want to touch on, and this is something I think that went super under the radar last year, was Trey Turner.
I was waiting for you to say that. Yeah.
Most of us last year, man, like he hit the awesome grand slam against Venezuela in the WBC, and I think everybody fell in love with Trey Turner, who was watching baseball at that point, and especially
Philly fans.
But man, he was so bad to start the season. So last year, first half of the season, Trey Turner, 247 batting average, 687 OPS, 84 WRC plus, going into the All-Star break. Fortunately, he did turn things around in that second half of the year. 292 batting average, 901 OPS, 140 WRC plus. Third best among shortstops second half of the season, trailing only Corey Seager and JP Crawford. The really interesting thing about Trey Turner, I'll let you read this if you want to. It's also available on my Substack if you guys are interested over there for free. But Trey Turner has been undergoing what seems to be a philosophical shift in his approach at the plate. So, of course, when he first came up with the Nationals, he was this really speedy, contact-oriented player. Well, since 2020, Turner's seen his average launch angle increase from 9.5 degrees to 13 degrees, which has increased his fly ball rate, intuitively, pretty significantly by 5.7% in that span. So it's brought more home runs to the table. But what we saw during the first half of last year is it wasn't very effective. Like, Trey Turner's not a Frank Thomas profile. He's not a 250-pound guy who's built to be hitting 30, 35 home runs. And while there seemed to be a happy medium where like a little bit more fly balls, a little bit higher of a launch angle definitely benefited him, it seemed like he went a little bit too far during the first half of last year. And I say that because the second half of the season, when we really saw Trey Turner's numbers take off, his launch angle came down a little bit more. So a little bit flatter bat path, prioritizing contact a little bit more, cut down on strikeouts a little bit. So he's going to be a really interesting player for me going into 2024 because I love Trey Turner. Trey Turner, I think, is one of the most fun players that I've ever watched. Mookie Betts is my favorite player, and then Trey Turner was number 2 on that list after he came up and debuted. I think it was in 2016. I'm interested to see what happens here with him in Philly because Philly's got him under contract for another decade. And
yeah,
it's like a smaller stature guy trying to hit the baseball out of the ballpark, even in a hitter-friendly park like Citizens Bank. Not exactly a skill set that ages well. But
I do think with the launch angle and stuff, he is hitting a lot of more line drives. And in that park, where if he can get him in between the gaps and stuff like that, he can use his speed. Obviously, that speed's going to diminish as he gets older. But yeah, I 100% agree. He's one of my favorite players too. The fact that him and Bryce Harper are on the same team, for me, is just awesome. So
yeah, the vibes are definitely good in that Philly clubhouse. So it'll be interesting to see. I like the Phillies a lot. I think they got a really good manager with Rob Thompson. We'll ignore the poor Craig Kimbrell usage in the playoffs last year, but I really do like Rob Thompson as a leader. I think he's got a good philosophy when it comes to baseball. So I think the Phillies are a good bet to return to the postseason this year. And again, you have Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola at the top of that rotation. I think they're live to beat anybody in any 5 or 7 game series that come October. So like them a lot going into 2024. One team that spends a lot of money, didn't win a whole lot of baseball games last year, the New York Mets, entering the season, significant long shots in the National League East, 10-1 at Bet365, get them as high as 13-1 at FanDuel, 15-1 at BetRivers. The payroll is very high once again. They still got some big names: Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo. The pitching staff a lot less impressive than what we saw on opening day last year with Scherzer and Verlander and some of the other big names. But what do we make of these guys going into 2024? They're kind of in this weird, we're still spending a lot of money, but not necessarily all in to win a championship mode, even with Edwin Diaz back. So what are your thoughts?
So for me, as much as I hate to do it, because a lot of my friends are Mets fans, and I really was enjoying watching this Mets team the last couple of years, but I really like their season win total under. I think it was 82.5. It's probably down to 81. And I was thinking that before Senga strained his shoulder. And so now that he has a shoulder strain, I like their team total under even more. I guess the pitching isn't what I'm not super worried about the pitching, but at the same time, I just don't really know what I'm going to get. And at that number, at high a number in a division where you have two teams like the Phillies and the Braves, and I also think that the Nationals are better than people think, that it's just going to be hard for them to continue to stack wins with mediocre pitching. And so that means you're going to be asking a lot out of Jose Quintana, who I understand looked decent at times in Pittsburgh last year and a little bit in his time in St. Louis as well. But again, not a pitcher that I like. Is probably going to have like around a 4.5 ERA, give or take. Severino is a guy that supposedly was tipping all of his pitches last year. He's supposedly fixed all that. And he should be a guy I think he's on like a 1-year deal too. So he's a guy that I look to pitch better. Same with Sean, Mr. Overrated Manaea, as I like to call him. He seems to be looking better. I know that you and Beaver talked about that a little bit on Twitter as well. So maybe there is some positive things there, but as far as we're getting Edwin Diaz, who was a very electric closer, one of the best in baseball, if not the best in baseball, off of a lower half injury. I don't really know what to expect that. Adam Ottavino hasn't been the same Adam Ottavino as that we've known to love from his time in Boston and before that. Brooks Raley, Drew Smith, Jorge Lopez. Jorge Lopez has absolutely fallen off a cliff since he got traded from Baltimore. He was nothing in Minnesota. I have a hard time believing he's going to be something special here. They're not very deep. As far as the lineup goes, the depth wise is concerned, Nevarez, Wendell, Joey Wendell, Zach Short, Tyrone Taylor. You see a lot of guys from the Brewers organization coming over with Stearns. I think Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, very solid pieces. McNeil, Marte, veteran guys, but Marte's definitely declining, and Jeff McNeil, I guess, can get hits, but do you really trust him to slug? I mean, he might be able to get on base, but I don't really know what he's going to really do for you as a cleanup hitter. And then Harrison Bader, Brett Beatty, San Francisco Alvarez to round out the lineup. Alvarez, I'm sure, is going to be a stud at some point, probably going to hit close to 25 to 30 homers, but Brett Beatty and Harrison Bader, a lot of question marks there. So I think that what you might see happen is if the Mets get out to a slow start, I would not be surprised if they traded a Pete Alonso and a Jeff McNeil, got a whole bunch of pieces back, and then went and signed a Pete Alonso back to New York in free agency. Like, I truly believe that wouldn't be crazy to me. I just feel like if this Mets team is not very good to start the year, they're going to start selling off pieces. Maybe it's not Pete Alonso, maybe it's somebody else, but I think they're either going to be very good and exceed expectations, or they're going to be bad, which is what I bet on. And they're going to probably trade a couple pieces, and they're not going to sniff anywhere close to 70, let alone 80 wins.
I'm with you. I think the biggest red flag for them, I pulled it up while you were speaking for a second, but Mets second most games on their schedule this year against teams that finished 2023 with a winning record. I think that's a really tough spot to be for a team that has a lot of youth, some really good youth. You know, you mentioned Francisco Alvarez. Last year, he was only 21 years old, hit 25 home runs. Only guy in Major League history to hit more home runs as a catcher in their age 21 season or younger. Johnny Bench, you might have heard of him, first ballot Hall of Famer, ended up with 389 career home runs. So the future is definitely bright for Alvarez. His defense and framing definitely improved last year. Pete Alonso, I think is going to mash. You know, he's a guy who's playing for a new contract. I don't think you could say enough good things about Pete Alonso. Francisco Lindor, consistently one of the most valuable players in the league if you factor in his glove and his bat. Last year, joined the 30-30 club, 30 homers, 30 stolen bases for the first time, playing through an elbow injury that required surgery after the season. So I think it's not out of the question that we're going to see an even better version of Francisco Lindor.
He's such a stud.
He's such a stud. I think leaving Cleveland, ironically, going to a major market has sort of been forgotten about because the Mets haven't experienced team success the last couple of years. But one of the better hitters in baseball, a truly elite defender up the middle at the six as well. I think the biggest thing with this team, even if you like guys like Manaea, even if you like the Luis Severinos of the world on these one-year prove-it deals, there's just not a lot of proven commodities. And for a team with such a large payroll that has such a difficult schedule, there's a lot of ways I could see this season going south for the Mets, and not a lot of ways I could see it turning out well for them. So for me as well, I think betting on them to finish below 500 is probably the smart way to approach the futures market here.
And one other thing that I just want to shout out, Francisco Lindor doesn't take days off, doesn't at all. 161 games in 2022, 160 games in 2023, and then he was doing the same thing in Cleveland, 158, 159, 158, 143. So, dude, absolutely posts every single day, is a stud every single day. 121 WRC plus last year. I think he's going to be even better this year. He might be a 40-40 guy possibly this year, and I truly believe that.
Yeah, he's a stud. We love Frankie on this show.
Oh yeah.
Last two teams we got to touch on. We got the Marlins and then the Nationals. I know probably not teams that people are rushing out to buy merchandise for or watch if you're out of market of those two teams' fan bases. But Marlins coming off of a season where they showed some promise, but they come in this year 35-1 to win the NL East. Not a lot of people picking them to make the playoffs. I know Yuri Perez has the injury. They've had some other injuries to the pitching staff. They've lost some guys like Jorge Soler to other teams in free agency. Are we wrong to underestimate the Marlins this year, or should we expect a little bit more out of them?
No, I think they're going to be absolutely terrible. It's one of my favorite team total unders or season win total unders, however you want to say it. I don't see it with this team in any way, shape, or form. Just on the protected list, you have Sandy Alcantara, Cy Young winner, Edward Cabrera, Braxton Garrett, Yuri Perez. I mean, that is literally your top. I mean, a very, very, very good rotation. So you're taking all those guys out. And then on top of the fact you're talking with a team that had really, really hard time scoring runs last year, and they didn't get any better. The fact that they have AJ Puck, Ryan Weathers, Trevor Rogers, and Max Meyer in the rotation is absolutely scary. I don't know if anybody saw AJ Puck last year, but he was terrible, and they were only asking him to come out for an inning or two. If he's going to be in there for 3 or 4 innings, I don't know what the hell they're expecting from him. Ryan Weathers, I mean, they're all lefties too, so I guess if you like lefties, then maybe you like the Marlins rotation, but Trevor Rogers is a guy who's a first-round top 15 pick that's really never panned out. Ryan Weathers, trust me, I saw a lot of him in San Diego. Great hair, terrible pitcher. And the bullpen last year, who was actually really good at times. Well, now Puck's going to be a starter. That means that Tanner Scott, because remember, David Robertson's gone. Tanner Scott's now your closer. Nardi, Anthony Bender, not David. And then Jorge Soriano. It's just really, really bad all across the board. I'm not going to get into it a whole bunch because we're running long right now, but Miami's absolutely terrible. And I think they're going to lose absolutely a lot of the game. It's one of my favorite bets of this season is a Miami season total win total under.
I 100% agree. This, we keep mentioning win percentage in one-run games, but the Marlins were the poster child for overachievement in 2023. They won 70% of their games that finished with a one-run
game. Yeah.
Yep. And again, like we've talked about, huge regression candidate going into 2024, even before the injuries, even before losing Jorge Soler. This is a team that they were 75-1 at one point to have the worst record in Major League Baseball. I don't think they're that bad, but I did take some alternate unders on them. I took their under, I think it was 78.5 or 77.5 at -110, and then I took them under 69.5 wins as well. I believe it was at about plus 520 on at the sports book. So for me, this is a team that just, again, doesn't have a lot of promise. The offense has not been good in previous seasons. Jorge Soler made up for some of that. Luis Arraez having one of the most remarkable seasons from a batting average perspective that we will probably ever see, but one that's probably also never going to be replicated. The guy doesn't hit the baseball particularly hard. He's just, he almost defies modern hitting coaches and the way we teach hitting nowadays, because he has that like place it approach at the plate. But I mean, you mentioned it. You go through the rotation. Luzardo, you like him, but there's a lot of question marks after him. And the offense, I mean, I'm not betting on a bounce back from Tim Anderson. Brian De La Cruz is year 3 of appearing on all the fantasy baseball sleeper lists. Jazz Chisholm, I think, is one of the most overrated players in baseball.
Whoa. I'm just kidding.
We can get into another time, Toast, but the skill set, the guys who strike out a lot, guys who can't hit left-handed pitching, like there's just a lot of flaws for a guy who was on the cover of MLB The Show.
No, I get it. And he can't play defense either. So
Not a lot to like with the Marlins. I think this is one of the teams where we're more aligned on this year, where we're not expecting good things at all from them.
And also, as an organization as a whole, they're never really good back-to-back years. Let me see, I had it written down. So they won 84 games last year. The last time they went over 85, the last time they had won at least 79 games was 2016. And then the time before that was 2010. So at no point in the last 15 years has this team really been good over a course of a long period of time. So they had a decent year last year that they completely overperformed. I think it's the exact opposite this year. Get in on your Miami unders.
Could not agree more. Okay, last team, and then we have officially covered all 30 MLB teams prior to opening day. Washington Nationals.
Man,
in my opinion, one of the most backwards run organizations in all of baseball.
Yeah,
I know you said they might be better than people think this year.
I do.
Tell me why.
It's just, I feel like some of the guys are better. Okay. First and foremost, CJ Abrams, I think, is going to be a very good baseball player. I think I saw him a lot in San Diego. I watched him kind of grow up. And then we traded him away, obviously, in the Soto trade. I think that getting 600 plus at bats this year, batting in the leadoff spot, is going to be very beneficial to him. He might only bit like 260 to 265, but I think he's going to slug over 400, maybe over 415. He probably have close to 20 homers, and he's probably going to have 40 to 50 stolen bags. And if he can steal some bags, that means he's going to give a guy like Lane Thomas, who's been pretty solid last year, Jesse Winker in a bounce back, definitely needs a bounce back year, but Winker can't play defense, but his bat is usually always there. Joey Meneses, I actually think, is actually one of the more underrated players in baseball. Just been really solid the last year or two for the Nats. It gets lower as you get down. Obviously, I'm not really there, but I can't think of the kid. Who did they just start? Aren't the Nats starting somebody in center field? Am I missing something? Am I doing that again in my head? Anyway, I can't think of. I feel like there's who are they
talking about? James Wood, are you?
Yes. Gosh, dang it. They have that James Wood kid that just set this world on fire. He's not an outfielder, though, is he? I don't know why I had that in my head as an outfielder in my head.
Yeah, James Wood's an outfielder.
Is he? Okay. So it's late. But yeah, I think
6'7", James Wood, he doesn't look like an outfielder.
No, he doesn't. He looks like an Aaron's Judge, but black.
Yep.
Just an absolute stud, hitting nukes all over the place. I just think that there's a lot of good things. Dylan Cruz is another guy that, again, he's going to be in triple or double A this year or whatever. But him, James Wood, Alex Call, Jacob Young, there's things to like in the Nationals organization. I think they're going to be a bad team this year, but I do think there's going to be, at times, they're going to be pitching well, and I actually think they're going to get better as time goes, because Strasburg is off the payroll now. Patrick Corbin's going to be off of the payroll here soon, and then they're going to have guys like Mackenzie Gore and Josiah Gray be leading that rotation. So maybe not this year for the Nats, but there's a lot of small little pieces to really like with this Nationals team, at least from my perspective.
I admire your optimism. I think outside of CJ Abrams, I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know if I trust this team's player development. I do think it served them well to go trade for a guy like James Wood, who was almost already completely developed. It's hard to mess up a guy's development when he's a block away, so to speak.
Yeah.
CJ Abrams is really the only guy I really want to talk about with this team. Last year, got off to a really bad start, barely batting above 200 to start the year. 66 WRC plus about midway through June. But after they put him in the leadoff spot, he showed a little bit better approach, and then they put him in the leadoff spot. From June 19th to the end of the season, 265 batting average, better than a league average OPS, above league average WRC plus, nearly doubled his walk percentage, cut back on the strikeouts, all good things. Average exit velocity, barrel percentage all went up. You mentioned the stolen bases. You know who led the league in stolen bases after C.J. Abrams went in the leadoff spot?
C.J. Abrams did.
Even more than Ronald Acuna, even more than Corbin Carroll, Estuary Ruiz, and some of those guys. So I think there's a lot to like with Abrams here. I'm a little bit worried about the Nationals and their organizational philosophies. We saw signs up at spring training that they don't care how fast guys throw a ball for. I mean, that's just telling me you don't know ball at a really, really obvious and flawed level. I worry about that. I saw some guys in the organization talking about C.J. Abrams should pull the baseball less, which makes absolutely no mathematical sense.
What?
This was a direct quote from somebody in the Nationals organization. So if guys like Abrams and James Wood and Mackenzie Gore actually turn out to be very impactful major league players, I think it'll be extremely impressive, because not only will they have succeeded at something very hard, which is to become a good major league player, but they will have overcome the intellectual limitations of their own front office and player development systems. The Nationals are going to be really bad. I think there's very little chance that they finish anywhere other than 5th in the National League East. Yeah. I think they're going to be right there with Colorado for one of the worst records in baseball. We'll see. There's some young talent on this team. Theoretically, guys like Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore, the CJ Abrams, like Ruiz behind the plate. The guys can get better. There just doesn't seem like a whole lot of urgency within this organization, and I think they're trying to be a little bit too trendy. Similar to how you were talking about the Guardians not wanting to hit too many home runs because they think the league is going to balance itself out. I think the Nationals think that in the next 2 years we're going to go back to playing in the 1980s, and I just don't know if that's the case. So,
well, even Keibert Ruiz came over when he came over from the Dodgers. He was like a really, really big prospect, and now he's just kind of like, to your point, just like, man, like they could have really built him up into something special, and he really hasn't done yet. The number on CJ Abrams' stolen bases this year is 37.5, and that's over.
You're joking. 37.5?
Yeah. That's what I bet it at. I just looked it up.
He had 36 in the second half of the season last year.
I wish I could figure it out. I was listening to Peter Appel, or whatever his last name is, that does just baseball. Yeah. And he was talking about, he found a stat about a base running stat that's like, God, it's going to bother me now. I'm going to have to go listen to it again. But he was by far the best base stealer in the league last year, above the guys that you had just mentioned. I just can't think of what the stat is. He had said he just found it on Fangraphs this year. But regardless, just showing that how well that CJ Abrams is how well of a base stealer CJ Abrams really is.
Yes. So 47 stolen bases and 51 attempts last year. I mean, the only guy with his volume that stole at above a 90% clip, Corbin Carroll was up there as well, but so actually I'm mistaken there. I'm just pulling this up and looking at this live, but elite in terms of stolen bases, in terms of volume and in success rate. He was also the fourth most aggressive in his stolen base opportunities. So when you add up hits, singles, walks, basically just times you get to first base, and then the amount of stolen bases that a guy has in those situations, CJ Abrams was more aggressive than everybody except for Estuary Ruiz, Ellie De La Cruz, and Bobby Witt Jr. So 37.5 for his season total for stolen bases. That's something I'm going to bet before I go to bed tonight. Absolutely. So
I love it.
Toast, I appreciate the hell out of you, man. 30 teams in just a couple of days doing this. And of course, huge shout out to Kyle. Appreciate
thank you, Sauce. Platform thank you
on the channel. But opening day is finally here. You know, guys, feel free, everybody, men, women, if there's children on YouTube, I don't know. I don't have kids like Toast, so I'm a little bit out of the scene on that. But if kids watch YouTube, feel free to reference this video, ask us questions throughout the season, hit us in the comments, all those great things. We really appreciate the support. We're going to be here every single week. I know a lot of podcasts start and then they fall off. We will be here every single week throughout the entire season.
Even if it's just me and Commish talking to each other, we're going to be here. And the comments, anything that if we say something wrong or you think that we disagree with us, tell us in the comments. Like, honestly, we just want to talk baseball in general. So it's not about being right or wrong. If I said something wrong and you wanted to correct in the comments, please do. Like, I just want to be better, everybody to be better and have more baseball knowledge. That's all.
100%. And we're going to make mistakes because we're saying stuff live and sometimes pulling up charts and graphs and things like that right in the middle when we get a train of thought. So if we ever say something incorrect, we don't want to be putting out incorrect information. So let us know. But truly, really appreciate everybody. Can't wait to get on the live shows with you, with Sauce and with Beaver this year as well. Plenty of K props to come. Plenty of hitter props coming from Toast. Of course, some sides and total as well. Toast, do you want to get us out of here?
We'll be back next week on Sunday. Our live show for Sauce tomorrow, every day, a little bit different schedule. It's going to be early with the Sweet 16, but once NCAA basketball is on, we're going to have that normal middle of the day show as we always do. So, thank you again to Sauce and everybody for letting us come on this channel. This has been Plate Coverage, and I hope to see you guys next Sunday.
See ya.